Good afternoon, everyone. The July 17th, 2025 work session of the Gwinnett County Board of Education is now called to order. Without further delay, I turn the meeting over to Interim Superintendent Dr. Taylor to bring us our first presentation.
Thank you, Chair Dr. Simmons, and of course, good afternoon to everyone present and online. Before we begin today, I'd like to draw your attention to the banner on my left, where you'll find the updated school board's core beliefs and commitments. Starting today, these core beliefs and commitments will be displayed during our 7 p.m. business meetings, as well as our 2 p.m. work sessions. These statements aren't just words. They reflect the guiding principles that shape every decision we make and every goal we set. They'll serve as a compass for our district, reminding us of our shared responsibility to foster a learning environment where every student can thrive. I encourage you all to take a moment to read them carefully, as they are essential to our work we do together as educators, leaders, and community members. So at this time, we will have Interim Chief of Schools Jay Nebel introduce his team to present the first agenda item. Mr. Nebel.
All right, thank you, Dr. Taylor. Chairperson, Dr. Simmons, board members, Dr. Taylor, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today and to provide you with two very important presentations. Before we begin our presentations this afternoon, however, I would like to take a point of privilege to recognize and thank a remarkable leader in our district, Mr. Randolph Irvin, whose work you are very familiar with, will be retiring from his position as Director of Student Discipline and Behavioral Interventions in the Office of Student Discipline and Behavioral Interventions on August 1st. After 27 years of dedicated service to education, including 20 impactful years with us here at GCPS, Mr. Irvin will be taking the next step forward. So Randolph, we want to say thank you for your unwavering support and your wisdom, for always answering the call no matter the hour or the challenge. I want to remind you and thank you that your work has touched the lives of more students and adults than we can count, and your guidance, along with the leadership of those in your office, has been critical in supporting our principals, our schools, and most importantly, our kids. So Mr. Irvin, we congratulate you on your well-earned retirement and wish you all the best in the next chapter. Thank you for everything you've done for GCPS and the legacy you leave behind. Thank you. All right. So we now turn our attention to our first presentation of the afternoon, the Student Discipline Update. This important update will be led by Mr. Eric Thigpen, Executive Director of the Department of Academic Supports, with support from Mr. Grady Caldwell, Director of Behavior Supports and Interventions, and Ms. Kimberly Bussey, proud principal of Decula Middle School. Our presentation today will highlight both areas of celebration and opportunities for continued growth. You'll hear about our district and local school efforts that have influenced our data, plus enhancements to our approach for the upcoming year and beyond, and meaningful work taking place in our schools to support positive student outcomes. Now I'll call Mr. Thigpen to the podium to begin our presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Nebel. Chairperson Dr. Simmons, board members, Interim Superintendent Dr. Taylor. Today I will provide you an overview of our discipline data from the 24-25 school year. As we look at our agenda for today, one of the strategic priorities in the Blueprint for the Future is equity, which we define as the conditions which each and every child receives what they need to develop their full academic and social potential. As we look at 2A and 2B, we know that we focused on MTSS, that framework this year, to ensure that every student receives the support they need, academically and behaviorally and socially. We've emphasized collaboration among staff and used data to guide timely interventions. As we look at 2B, we've worked to ensure that all students have equitable opportunities and access, whether it's advanced coursework, extracurriculars, or behavior supports. And our discipline practices are being refined to reduce disproportionality and promote supportive and affirming environments. We'll have an overview, a high-level overview of the 24-25 data regarding not just student discipline, but also behavioral interventions. We'll look quickly at a SWOT analysis, looking at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We'll hear about the impact of our work through Principal Bussey, and then we'll have time for question and answer. This data will be contextualized through 3 years' worth of data, and we've seen a shift, just a gradual shift in our discipline patterns. And it reflects a decrease in exclusionary practices and an increase in restorative interventions, particularly following the implementation of the revised JCDI policy. As a reminder, mid-year through the 22-23 school year, we had a mid-course correction with a shift. And always we are looking at the discipline data board, dashboard, which is a summary of students with an ODR, or Office Discipline Referral, and the corresponding consequences. And that dashboard provides real-time disaggregated data for our leaders by school, grade, and student group. And this data helps us not just inform, but also monitor what's happening in our schools, our clusters, and school levels. A couple high-level findings. 93.2% of our students did not receive an ODR, reflecting in a strong positive culture for really effective Tier 1 supports for our schools. The total number of discipline incidents is lower this year than the 23-24 school year, indicated improved behavior management strategies and early intervention. In-school suspension, or ISS days, were down 15%, and out-of-school suspension days, or OSS, were down 12% district-wide, showing a real shift toward less exclusionary practices. Fewer students received exclusionary consequences among all categories compared to the 23-24 school year, with OSS rates lower than the 22-23 and 23-24 school year. Now, despite all these overall improvements I've articulated, our Black and Hispanic students continue to be overrepresented in both exclusionary and non-exclusionary consequences relative to their enrollment proportions. This highlights still our ongoing need for evidence-based interventions and continued staff training. In the elementary schools, Rule 1DB, disrupting class, has become the most frequent rule violation, rising from third to first place. This trend suggests the need to revisit classroom management strategies and reinforce Tier 1 expectations at the elementary level. So we'll look at a SWOT analysis of what's going well and what areas where we may not be meeting a KPI, or places where we can take actions to really have immediate or significant impact. And then something that, if we're not careful, could push us back to JCDI days. A strength is one of our keys this year, 7% reduction in district-wide tribunals compared to the previous year. And this reflects, again, our commitment to early interventions and restorative approaches that keep students engaged in learning. Additionally, we've also seen positive outcomes from integration of Tier 1 universal behavioral expectations and a strong also focus on Tier 2 supports. And schools are increasingly using data to identify student needs, targeting interventions before the behavior escalates. As we look at a weakness, despite overall progress, we continue to see disproportionality representation with our Black and Hispanic students, in both in-school as well as out-of-school suspension data. To address this, we are continuing our collaboration with Dr. Richard Welsh, Associate Professor at Vanderbilt University, whose research and guidance are helping us to examine systemic patterns, as well as develop discipline practices that meets the needs of our students and our teachers. Looking at opportunities, an emerging opportunity that lies is in the expansion of Tier 3 support for our staff. Currently, about 4% of our teachers have participated in behavior coaching cycles. That's receiving one-on-one personalized strategies to manage challenging behaviors. Through this individualized, hands-on approach, they build teacher capacity and contribute to the improved classroom environments. Scaling this level of support can strengthen classroom environments as well as reduce disruptions. Last year, we completed 551 coaching cycles. And then a threat is 10C, and that's a persistent challenge that we've had in our high schools over the years. This trend signals a need to really explore root causes such as student engagement, school climate, and mental health to implement targeted attendance and re-engagement strategies. So let's dig a little deeper into strengths. As we said, 93.2% of students have not received an ODR. And district-wide, we've seen that tribunals are down 7% over the previous year. To extend that, 95.4% of students in the district had 0 to 1 ODR. So what do we attribute this to? The district's strong emphasis on Tier 1 supports, including PBIS, has created consistent expectations and reinforced positive student behaviors across all schools. Instead of just punishing bad behavior, PBIS really focuses on teaching students how to behave, the appropriate behavior, and also rewarding that behavior to create supportive learning environments for everyone. So 12 of our schools were recognized last year by the State Department of Education as distinguished. This year we anticipate greater than 50 of our schools will be recognized by the state of Georgia as distinguished. Restorative practices are a way for schools to build strong relationships and resolve conflicts in a respectful and meaningful way. So instead of only issuing consequences for students who make mistakes, it really focuses on repairing harm, understanding different perspectives, and making things right. It also helps to create a culture in the school where everyone feels valued and heard. So this intentional use of restorative practice for us has helped build stronger relationships between not just students to students, but also students and staff, while also providing structural opportunities to repair harm and to restore community when conflict arises. Also, the development of restorative in-school suspension models, and Principal Bussey will talk more about this later, but it's really shifted our focus from measures of punitive measures to really more supportive intervention evidence-based environments, which allow students to reflect, to learn from their mistakes, to re-engage with their school community. We've had about 113 of our lead ISS teachers participate in training focused on transforming ISS from a punitive environment to a much more academic, holistic, restorative environment. A district-wide focus also we've seen on high-quality professional learning, and that's led by our behavioral coaches. And this equipped teachers with effective strategies for classroom organization, proactive behavior management, and student engagement. We have about 15 different courses that we offered last year to our teachers, and that coursework through our behavior coaches was led by Mr. Grady Caldwell. So how are we going to respond to this moving forward? We would like to ensure that we have targeted coaching support for all of our high needs areas. And that's in coaching cycles as well as with school administrators. And it's going to increase the number of behavioral coaches and cycles to provide more teachers with individualized support in classroom management. And so a focus on providing high-quality professional learning by district behavior coaches is really looking at classroom organization and classroom management strategies to help teachers proactively address the student behavior concerns. The district is going to offer more frequent and targeted professional learning opportunities, and while last year we offered 162 to our teachers. We talked about, obviously, the development of restorative in-school suspension models. We'll continue to work on that model with our teachers, emphasizing reflection, learning, and more importantly, the reintegration of students into their classroom environments. And we'll provide increased targeted supports and resources and interventions to schools with higher level of behavioral needs, ensuring an accessible support system across the entire district. So as we turn our attention to weakness, we look at 1DB and disproportionality. And 1DB is disrupting class, and it's become the most frequent rule violation in our elementary schools across Gwinnett County. As well as disproportionality. Unfortunately, it remains really across our school district, and not just across our district, but across the country as well. And so what do we attribute this to? There's been a noticeable rise in behavior challenges and changes with our younger students, including difficulty with self-regulation, attention, and peer interactions. And these early onsets, significant behaviors often escalate without any timely intervention. Social media, it really continues to impact student behavior, particularly in the areas of peer conflict, attention-seeking behaviors, and exposure to inappropriate content. These influences often manifest in the classroom as disruptions or defiance. And then many students lack structured opportunities to learn and practice conflict resolution. So that leads to escalated peer disputes as well as disciplinary incidents. If we can do more to really embed these skills into SEL and restorative practices, it will definitely go a long way. And so finally, the national trends, we see that these patterns are consistent with schools across the country that are reporting an increase in disruptive behavior, in particular post-pandemic, and we're working to balance that level of accountability with support for our students and teachers. So how will we address this moving forward? We will develop and implement family engagement strategies that promote shared understanding of school discipline policies, restorative practices, and student support systems. This will strengthen the home-school partnership and reinforce consistent expectations during school. We'll also continue to work with Dr. Welsh, and we'll host 2 convenings with peer districts to collaborate on the most effective, non-punitive restorative discipline practices. These sessions will foster shared learning, innovation, and alignment with national best practices. We will design and implement a comprehensive, multi-tiered discipline reform strategy with Dr. Welsh, and that integrates prevention, intervention, and re-engagement supports. And this approach will ensure consistency, equity, and responsiveness across all of our schools. And then finally, for our students with the most intensive needs, the district will conduct classroom observations and provide classroom and behavioral consultations with our teachers. Completion of student observations for high-need students, followed by a behavior coach consultation and observation and feedback to serve as really thought partners with our teachers, is recommended at a very high level to help us really look at decreasing the frequency of challenging student behaviors. Last year, we completed 202 student observations. An opportunity we think we have is really to examine a little bit more what's happening with our behavior coaches. So 4% of our teachers received a Tier 3 level of support through a behavior coaching cycle. And we attribute this to our coaches doing an amazing job in a couple of areas. So let's talk about the coaching cycle first. These are structured cycles providing ongoing observation, feedback, consultation, and modeling. And it allows teachers to really refine their practices and build confidence in managing complex classroom dynamics. Also PBIS. Again, it serves as the foundation for Tier 1 behavioral expectations, and it creates a consistent, proactive, school-wide culture that supports both teachers and students. Restorative practices. Our behavior coaches have done an amazing job in supporting the use of restorative practice approach to build relationships, repair harm, and reduce our reliance on exclusionary discipline. And then structured advisement periods offer students social-emotional support, which in turn reduces behavior disruptions and supports our classroom management. The integration of social-emotional learning helps students develop self-awareness, self-regulation, as well as interpersonal skills. And we've placed a very strong emphasis on this in our Tier 1 framework, where we're really teaching this through our advisement and the platforms that we partnered with through SEL lessons. You can see this not just in advisement, but also in our morning meeting structures. And then finally, a COMP, or a classroom organization and management plan, provides teachers with training in evidence-based classroom organization and management techniques, which are essential for creating structured, engaging, and respectful learning environments. So what is our response to this moving forward? Well, we're going to continue to invest in our behavior coaches. And again, you've heard some of the work that they do is really individualized, job-embedded support for teachers. And it's through these behavioral coaching cycles that we feel that we are really improving not just the environment of our classrooms, but classroom management in particular, and student engagement as well. Also, we're looking at the creation and implementation of clear procedures using our GCPS behavior flowchart, which will be something that we use as an additional support and intervention. And schools will be supported in using this flowchart to establish clear, consistent procedures for identifying students in need or additional behavior supports and interventions, ensuring timely and equitable responses. And then finally, we'll continue to offer targeted professional learning that's focused on classroom organization and management and building those positive teacher-student relationships, and also reducing the power struggles that seem to sometimes exist in our schools with our students so that we can de-escalate the situation prior to it escalating. The threat, and this is something that we've been looking at for some time now, but Rule 10C, or AWOL from class, remains the most frequent cited rule violation. And it's continuing a multi-year trend. And so we attribute this to some disengagement, some classroom avoidance, and the underlying emotional factors, but it really shows itself because our high schools are extremely large. We have this avoidance behavior that's due to academic struggles or anxiety or fear of failure. There's also, when students don't feel connected or they have a lack of engagement, that can happen as well. And then there's this peer influence or social dynamics and external pressures that contributes to this as well. So how are we going to respond to this moving forward? We're looking to implement a targeted mentoring program to build relationships and provide personalized support for students who persistently skip class by focusing on fostering trusting and promising and promoting consistent attendance through adult-student connections. We're also looking at enhancing staff visibility and supervision in the hallways, one of the really tried and true responses over time. And this effort will really deter unauthorized movement of students, not just while instructional time is happening, but also during transitional, non-instructional time. And then strengthen our communication and collaboration with families to address these attendance behavioral concerns through resources and workshops to help build family support with their child's academic commitment. And we'll be working with Dr. Tarika Williams and her team on that. And then conducting student focus groups to gather student perspectives on barriers to class attendance. And then not just gathering that, but also using their feedback to inform our response so that we can build not just student-centered interventions, but a warm, welcoming environment. So as you know, we are committed to continue to support our students and our teachers by reinforcing Tier 1 strategies and Tier 2 supports. But here to talk about what is happening is Principal Bussey, principal at Dacula Middle School. And she will share the Dacula Middle School story of how her intentional leadership has really moved efforts in such a way where it's yielding fewer exclusionary discipline actions, more engaged students, and improved academic outcomes. At this time, you will hear from Principal Kimberly Bussey.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Dr. Adrienne Simmons, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Dr. Taylor, and honored guests. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. As the proud principal of Dacula Middle School, I am honored to share how we are reimagining student discipline through a more thoughtful, responsive, equitable lens aligned directly with the equity component of our district's blueprint for the future and grounded in the board's theory of action. At Tequila Middle School, our local school plan for improvement speaks not only to the academic needs, but also the non-academic needs of each and every student in our building. This is carried out through robust multi-tiered systems of support known as MTSS and a school-wide commitment to opportunity and access. It is often said that if you cannot manage them, you cannot teach them. I would take that a step further and say, if you cannot establish relationships with them, you cannot reach them. This is recognition of the fact that for maximum student achievement, there must be connection before content. We believe that for learners to thrive, students must feel safe, supported, and seen. And we have been hard at work transforming our discipline practices to support that vision. Moments ago, Mr. Thigpen shared the results of a SWOT analysis with you, which included 4 elements that attribute to the strengths associated with discipline and the course corrections taken. Today, I'm excited to share what each of those elements looks like at the local school level and how their implementation have made a significant difference in both school climate, as indicated by our annual engagement survey of stakeholders, and student behavior, as indicated in our student discipline. When building the largest or even the smallest structure you can imagine, it is essential to begin with a strong foundation. Our foundation is the Tier 1 support that touch every student and adult in our building. At the core of our school culture are our PBIS and advisement programs. Our PBIS matrix outlines the tenets of what it means to be a real Falcon. We continually model and reinforce what it means to be a respectful, engaged, accountable leader. By way of a token economy, students earn Falcon funds through Synergy Points, reinforcing positive behaviors we want to see repeated. We further reinforce positive behaviors by distributing swag tags, hosting real-time, recognizing Falcon of the Week, and believe it or not, even middle schoolers still find it cool to hang out with the principal by earning breakfast with Bussy. But it doesn't stop with students. Our staff participate too. Staff receive Marigold Awards and Tequila Dojo dollars in recognition of the positivity they bring to the community. Our PBIS team does not govern itself blindly. This intervention team regularly reviews behavior data to identify trends and determine where targeted support is needed. That data informs decisions such as where there may need to be more supervisions in the halls, topics for professional learning, and even lessons for our advisement program. Our very intentional advisement program and lessons are delivered in restorative circles and leverage character-strong lessons and curated lessons to address areas such as conflict resolution, empathy, bullying, and accountability. With PBIS and advisement being foundational, we waste no time putting them into practice. For the first 20 days of each school year, students engage in advisement lessons that address various topics that will help them with the expectations of being a real Falcon. In short, we are proactive, intentional, and consistent in teaching students how to succeed, not just academically, but behaviorally and socially as well. The next layer of our approach centers on restorative practices, which allow us to shift from a model of punishment to one of relationships, accountability, and repair. Having begun as early as 2019, we fully embrace restorative chats and restorative circles with clear expectations for engagement. Restorative chats between students and adults provide an opportunity for adults to exercise empathy prior to doling consequences to an unheard student. It also provides a student exhibiting disruptive behaviors in class a moment of reflection to focus on what happened, who was affected, how the student feels, and what's needed to make things right. These are not limited to just student interactions. We've seen powerful results when adults use these practices too. For example, staff members requesting circles to repair harm or deepen mutual understanding among one another. By equipping our students and staff with tools to engage in authentic dialogue and reflection, we're fostering a school environment built on trust, empathy, and continuous growth. While we want to decrease exclusionary consequences of ISS and OSS among students, by no means does student misconduct simply result in kumbaya moments of chats and circles. Students do receive consequences. However, they also receive restoration to decrease the likelihood of this misbehavior being repeated. As a result, to reinforce our commitment to meaningful consequences, not just punitive ones, we've established our restoration room. This isn't your traditional in-school suspension where students sit in one room all day facing a wall with the expectation of no talking and no movement. It's a structured, restorative space where students engage in morning circles for goal setting, self-reflection and journaling, formal apologies, small group support, and of course, their academic coursework. If we're being honest, we will admit that most students enjoy out-of-school suspension and even regard it as a bit of a vacation. They are often home alone and not learning the lesson being taught in class, nor do they learn a lesson regarding their behavior. Any student returning from an out-of-school suspension begins with the restoration room. This better ensures they re-enter the learning environment repaired, restored, and ready, not resentful or disconnected. Restoration also increases the likelihood the behavior being repeated, thereby eliminating their opportunity and access to quality instruction with their peers. Our goal is not just to respond to misbehavior, but to prevent its reoccurrence by addressing its root causes and teaching more appropriate ways to handle conflict and emotion. None of this hard work happens without intentional investment in our staff. We have prioritized high-quality professional learning led by our behavior interventionist, behavior coach, and instructional coach and counselors. This work has included ongoing book studies, on-site modeling, and support from district partners to ensure our team is skilled and confident in leading restorative circles and responding to student needs effectively. This professional development is not a checkbox. It's a cultural shift, and it's creating a building full of educators who know how to lead with consistency, compassion, and high expectations. More importantly, it's creating a building full of students who are respectful, engaged, accountable leaders. So what's the result? What is the impact of this intricate and intentional work? Of course, middle schoolers will still make mistakes in the form of poor choices. The question is, do they learn from these mistakes? Assuming they do, you would see a decrease in the number of students who receive exclusionary consequences, taking them away from class. To gauge the effectiveness of our strategies, we use both the district discipline dashboard and local school synergy reports to monitor progress, drill down by individual student, and respond in real time with mentoring, small groups, check-ins, and strong parent partnerships. As you might imagine, at Decula Middle School, we've seen a decrease in exclusionary discipline, including lowered recidivism rates for both in-school and out-of-school suspensions at each grade level. More students are remaining in class, receiving the instruction and support they deserve. For the 2023-2024 school year, 23% of sixth graders who received an exclusionary consequence earned 3 or more. In 7th, 25%, and in 8th, 22%. This past 24-25 school year, we saw a decrease of 19% in 6th, 12% in 7th, and 5% in 8th. That's a total of 26 students in our building of 1,800, whereas the year prior, there was a total of 61. In both cases, each of these students are identified by name in our weekly MTSS Kid Talks and receive appropriate identified intervention. As a result of intervention and evidence of growth over time, when looking at students who receive 3 or more exclusionary consequences, we saw our 6th graders from the 2022-2023 school year decrease from 18% to only 5% as 8th graders. As a consequence of this work, our Real Falcons are not just better behaved, they're better supported, more self-aware, and more equipped to engage in learning and achieve academic success. We do not regard this work as a secret and is not happening in isolation. We have proudly opened our doors to host site visits for district leaders, families, local school councils, and other GCPS schools at every level, sharing our learning and helping others build similar systems in their own communities. So in closing, I want to thank this board for its continued commitment and allowing me to share my journey with you. As a final takeaway, discipline isn't about control, it's about growth. And at Decula Middle, we're not just building compliant students, we're cultivating future-ready leaders who are capable of keeping it real. They are respectful, engaged, accountable leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, Principal Bussey. You see real evidence of the work that's happening in our schools. At this time, board members will be happy to entertain your questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Thigpen and Principal Bussey, for the presentation. Board members, I turn it over to you for questions and comments at this time.
Thank you, Chair Dr. Simmons, and thank you, Principal Bussey, for that wonderful presentation. I really appreciate the quick note around OSS and ISS and how some students may view that as a vacation. And we know that when students miss instruction, they fall further behind in their academics. I have a few questions, not particularly to Decula Middle School, but for the district as it relates to some of the data that we have in front of us. For example, we know that over the course of 3 years that our Black and Hispanic students are disproportionately represented in ISS, OSS, and tribunals through all grade bands. I'm looking at some data here. For example, elementary school in 2022, our Black students made up 50.1%. And then going over to our tribunals, for 2 consecutive years, they made up 100% of students referred to tribunals. And when it relates to tribunals, and I know that the district has a plan to move forward to kind of provide a remedy, I wonder, and I've been hearing this from stakeholders, is there a transition plan? So sometimes with tribunals, it's give center or sometimes permanent expulsion. Is there a transition plan, particularly for students who are returning back to their home school, so that we can make sure that we mitigate the recidivism, the reoffending, and so that they can re-enter their home school?
Thank you for your question. And just to clarify some of the data you were referencing, it's overall as well as by level. But to answer your question, yes, we recognize the fact that we have a lot of work to do in that area, and that's why we're committed to the work with Dr. Welsh, not just looking at best practices here, but best practices across the country, looking at research. That's really his body of research and work. As a matter of fact, we have a meeting scheduled very soon. Mr. Nebel, myself, and another cluster superintendent, we're going to meet with a local school about what a reentry restoration meeting may look like for students that are returning from a give center into their attendance zone school.
Okay, thank you so much. And then this is more of a comment. I have two comments relating to my previous question around how we are supporting elementary students, because I'm looking at this data and the graphs, and does the district have a plan to invest in elementary school? I was presented with a very stark statistic just this past weekend where, and I'm sure you are aware, that 90% of students' brains are developed before age 5. And by the time that students enter our schools, how do we make sure, or how are we investing in that birth? I know we have the Play to Learn, but how are we investing in our students before they reach us? Because a lot of times, what I'm hearing from stakeholders and in my own experience, the GCPS curriculum moves very, very fast. And I know that one of the remedies you all mentioned was SEL. And so how are we ensuring that we capture and address the needs of our elementary students who may not come to our schools ready and prepared?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, we have a team that does really outstanding work in getting students ready for kindergarten and that pre-K work. And you mentioned Play to Learn. But once they get to us, whether that's in kindergarten or whether that's third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, and oftentimes it is third grade, fourth grade, or fifth grade, we're having to meet students' needs where they are. And so that is done really through the work of Mr. Grady Caldwell and his team and the behavioral coaches. As we stated earlier, all of our teachers in Gwinnett County Public Schools have been trained in restorative practices. This is the second year that we've had the good fortune of ensuring that all the teachers in new teacher orientation have also been trained in restorative practices. We talked to you about the 551 coaching cycles that our behavior coaches are completed last year, and we want to take that to scale and do more of that support. And that's just not working with teachers in terms of their management. Sometimes that's actually working with the student observations as well, and we did 202 of those. And so we see that most of those observations is really done at the lower levels with our elementary school students, and where the behaviors are a little more aggressive. And so they're out there consulting with teachers, observing and providing them feedback through modeling of how to de-escalate situations at the elementary school level. But it's critical that we maintain those 11 coaches in that space so that we can provide that support for them.
Thank you. And my last comment is around, I know you all mentioned the family engagement strategies. I would love to hear more about the family engagement and how we are bridging that gap. Because another thing that I'm hearing from stakeholders is just kind of reinforcing some of the practices and skills learned inside the school, and how can we enforce those at home. Some of our students, what we're seeing from stakeholders is, as it relates to behavior and discipline, sometimes it is this idea where students go home and they are independent, and there may not be anyone checking for them, checking to make sure they do their homework and all of that follow-up. So I know that there are other areas where the district has implemented more family engagement, like, for example, in our Title I schools, we have that parent liaison. I would love to hear more around the family engagement strategies in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Stay tuned, and we will definitely give you more on that. We're looking forward to better engaging our parents with discipline strategies to keep them disciplined, not just in school, but at home as well. Thank you.
Mr. Thigpen, if I can just interject one other piece. So, Ms. Stone, thank you for all 3 points. I just wanted to add one piece to the first two. This is why we're so excited. We referenced earlier the work of Mr. Irvin in his role, where he'll obviously be seated till the 1st, but all that work that Eric's talking about around the different behavior coaches, the cycles, the work that they've done, the reinforcing of positive behaviors in the elementary schools, how we use intervention time there to really reinforce the best behaviors. A lot of that work's been done through the office of Grady and Mr. Caldwell and his work. So we're excited. I know you guys were informed earlier, I believe in the week, about our internal reorganization. So taking Grady's Office of Behavior Supports and combining them with that Office of Student Discipline, we're really intentional in that thought process, being able to centralize all those efforts around positive behavior supports, even down to the naming of the office, making sure that it led with behavior supports and ended with student discipline. So even into the nomenclature that we used, but I just kind of wanted to, going back to both those first two questions you had, speak to the enthusiasm that we have for the reorganization of those two offices under Mr. Caldwell's leadership. We think that'll kind of uplift some of those best practices. So before we get to the point of tribunals, to your first question, we make sure we've exhausted all the restorative work that can be done prior to that.
Okay, thank you.
I made numerous notes as you went through the presentation. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Principal Bussey, for your. I wish, just as a I wish some of that would have been on a PowerPoint or written out. I was trying to take as many notes as possible. Great stuff going on there. Three main points that, because we could spend the whole rest of the day on this. How are we using other factors to look at how this is affecting us? How are we looking at and incorporating the socioeconomic piece, the family structure piece? And because it seems like when we talk about this disproportionality, it's always around race. I'd like to know how those other factors are being factored in to where we need to focus our attention.
Yeah, great question. So the intersectionality of all of the different factors that play into that. So to your point, it's not just race. It's student sex. It's grade level band. It's how long has the student been here. It's socioeconomic status. It's instructional setting. We analyze all of those things. And obviously, the more you can tear down and point to the factors that contribute possibly, right, not always, to situations occurring, the better we can address those by understanding who the student is, what the situation is, and where they're coming from. So it's really about understanding. So yes, we do in fact look at the intersectionality of multiple data points as it relates to student discipline.
I think it's important. The other big sort of bucket that I found a lot of my questions falling into is the family dynamic, the interaction with parents. The fact that when I hear from people, oftentimes the culture at home is at odds with the culture we're trying to establish in the school in terms for success. And some of that it's just, like it's been mentioned, that there may not be the supervision, there may not be the ability. How are we, and I was really thinking about when Principal Bussey brought up that point on parent partnership, you talked about family engagement strategies. I'd like to know specifically how are you incorporating sort of that cultural dynamic that we know leads to success in our schools and encouraging, maybe equipping, maybe even educating on how at the parental level that can be moved in a positive direction.
Yeah, excellent point and question, and we're working with Dr. Welsh to address that. Principal Bussey, you may want to come as well. But we know that all the ills of society get played out at the schoolhouse door, right? All of the social factors that happen in society get played out at the schoolhouse door. And so it's not enough for us just to meet needs of students, be it 7 to 2 or 8 to 3 or 9 to 4. It's really extending that and strengthening that partnership and relationship with our parents, regardless if it's a 1, 2, multi-generational family environment, to ensure that the same strategies that we're deploying at school, they can then build on those same strategies at home as well. And so we really want to focus on building our students in such a way that we're teaching them the appropriate behavior skills and not just discipline consequences for inappropriate behavior.
So knowing that parent partnership is so important, one of the things that we do is we literally open our doors and invite parents to come in so that they can see what the whole restorative process looks like. So they have actually come in, they've seen our advisement lessons, so they've seen students sitting in circles and communicating, and we do have handouts for the parents, and oftentimes we do it for our current school year kids, but we also do it for rising fifth grade, because that's where the most anxiety lies. Those parents who have never had a kid in middle school and they're extremely nervous about sending them. I want you to come in, I want you to see the kids, not, performing or anything. I want you to see what a typical day looks like. And so when we do that, one of the things that we give them is some of the handouts that we actually use with our teachers and our students of how to have a restorative chat, how to have a restorative circle, how to do a formal apology. And those formal apologies are structured in that you're going to admit what the problem was, you are going, you acknowledge the harm, et cetera, et cetera. And it also tells what an apology is not. Most times, parents walk away saying, I can use this at home. I'm like, put it on your refrigerator. It's a great reference. So little things like that. But we also, like I said real, I don't know, maybe 100 times when I was up here, but it's like reinforcing what it means to be real, what it means to be respectful, engaged, accountable leaders. So the same way that we have in our school, what does being real mean in the cafeteria? What does real mean in the classroom? What does real mean on the bus? Because our buses have them, we say, can you put this on your bus for us? We have it in different areas of the school. So what does being real look like at home? Respect looks like this at home. Being engaged looks like this at home. And even for the summer, we posted on social media how to be real through the summer. And there was some kid who replied, I think he said, oh God, we're at home. It doesn't stop. Right, because we want to reinforce what it means. And if we can help parents reinforce that at home and have greater success there, then we know that it's going to spill over into the school. So we're constantly trying to do things that pull the parents in to help, where they can help us help them. So that's just a couple of the small ways that we are partnering with parents to kind of push that into.
Yeah, I applaud your efforts. I've thought that from the moment I came on the board, identify what a successful culture looks like and create it. That's part of the key to success. Because there's so much to, and I've heard that. I remember parenting. I raised 4 kids, and well, my wife raised 4 kids. I was there helping as much as I could. Now 6 grandkids as of yesterday. Number 6 came into the world, and so super excited, but realizing, and I heard after the discipline, you need to restore the relationship. But I also know that there were a lot of times that didn't happen, not because I didn't want it to happen. I didn't have the time got away, whatever the situation was. I mean, I really want to applaud your efforts, and obviously it's making a difference when you talk about the statistics that are there. The last thing I wanted to bucket that I was thinking about was student agency, right? If you understand, I remember my kids went through North Gwinnett, and about 30 years ago, the principal implemented a couple of programs. One of them was Quiet Lunch. And I remember when my kids told me about their experience with Quiet Lunch. And they had expanded the lunch period because it gave the kids an opportunity to do all their fun networking with their friends. But if you weren't getting the other work done, you ended up in Quiet Lunch. And that led to a significant drop in ISS and OSS because the kids said, oh, I want my time with my friends, so therefore I will adjust my behavior in the classroom or throughout the hallways or whatever the situation was. And so how would you say that in your restorative practices, I didn't hear the word agency, but that doesn't mean, you know what I'm talking about. Is that part of what you're incorporating into the re-entry for those that have had discipline?
Right. So, as far as the re-entry is concerned, students, first of all, have to be able to recognize a huge part as it relates to agency is them, number one, knowing why they or the poor choice that they have made, and to be able to talk through how it affected everyone else and what makes it different. And there's a difference in having a conversation with a kid, because if I'm walking down the hall and I see a kid who, has stepped outside of the classroom and they know that they're about to have a restorative chat with their teacher, it is always my question of, well, what happened? Well, how did that impact everybody else? If it's something as simple as the teacher asked you to move and it's like, well, I didn't want to move, I didn't have to move, but the teacher asked you to do it, so let's talk through why. Were you in trouble? You weren't. The teacher wanted you to move so that you would avoid getting in trouble. And so equipping them with ways of thinking to avoid those things from happening in the future. Now, how do we make this right for you to be able to go back into classrooms? So we're at all times trying to equip the students with the tools necessary not to just be impulsive, but to know that their choices, their decision-making is going to have a positive or negative outcome.
Thank you so much. Last question for Mr. Thigpen. What are you doing to incorporate these great practices throughout the rest of the district?
Yeah, scalability is huge, right? So we'll provide learning opportunities for school leaders to come and learn more about that. Obviously, our behavior coaches will continue their work, but we have to continue to commit to getting that work done. And that's also working with our cluster superintendents. And so as we find and identify additional high flyers like Principal Bussey and the work that's happening at Decatur Mill, we'll highlight that. And for those who need more support, we'll provide more intensive support for those until we lift all of our schools to a place where that we never really arrive, but we're at a place where we feel very proud of the work and the results. So we'll continue that journey.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Thigpen, and thank you, Principal Bussey, for the details you shared with us today. And I'll kind of start there because it's always great to hear the perspective from our wonderful principals of all the great work you all are doing in your individual schools through your LSPI and being very intentional about thinking, how do we work through our PBIS and help our students out. I see this at most of the schools I visit. They have a phenomenal plan, and I love Mr. Knutson's question, how are we going to scale this across the district? Because it is so important that your word gets out, and I love that you said that you are sharing this model across as much as you can, and I think it's important for other principals that may be newer to the job or even ones that are super veterans that may not have these new updated thoughts and ideas. I think it's great that you're sharing that. I love that you use the word, no kumbaya moments. That's kind of hits home to me. I have twins right now that are going into their sophomore year in high school, and they are consistently talking about the repeat offenders, the students that are leaving the classroom, coming back in the classroom, and I like how you are handling that, and that is, through your restoration rooms, and I've seen other schools that have little quiet rooms, they'll have a beanbag chair and low lights and diffusers, and just allow the students to kind of reset, and I think that's so critically important. So thank you for all the wonderful work you are doing in your school, and I'm happy that you're sharing it across the district as far and wide as you can go. But appreciate it. And Mr. Thigpen, I just want to, remind everyone of all the great work everyone is doing. You and your team are doing. Roughly 93.2% of our students without an ODR, fantastic. ISS and OSS days are down. That's excellent news, and that is something that, we always strive to see our data getting better, and this is a chance for us to see that data getting better. My question, kind of goes back to you, and I mentioned it in talking to Principal Bussey, is, what specifically are we really doing to decrease those repeat offenders and the repeat offenses from the same student, which then just create more challenges for the other students watching, the classroom, and the teacher?
So one is really digging into the data in such a way that we can identify the recidivism that's there. All right, so that's part of it. It's data digs. It's having real conversations, real kid talk conversations by name. Who are the kids? Principal Bussey has actually identified who those students are. So that's the first step. And then the second step is helping them take ownership. So you're talking about the agency or the restorative practice process there. Helping them understand where the harm was caused, who the harm was caused to, them taking ownership for that, and then creating an environment where they re-enter in a warm and welcoming environment. And so the more we can build climate and culture that's positive in a way that supports our students, I think that'll go a long way to us working towards reducing recidivism as it relates to students who are in our schools repeating the same offense multiple times. Proud to say that the work that not just our behavior coaches are doing, but also our teachers and our assistant principals and principals are really taking the ownership for that. It's our job to continue to support them with that, and it's going to take time.
Right, right. No, I think it's important that students take accountability for their actions, and I'm happy to hear that this training is going above and beyond the behavioral coaches. It's going to all the new teachers that join our system, and hopefully the existing teachers are also getting reminders on how we are working through these concerns. And one of them being, you mentioned obviously the disproportionate discipline numbers with our Black and Hispanic students, and I really appreciate all the work that Principal Bussey is doing to open up her doors to the community and make sure that they come in. And I would love 100% of all those parents and caregivers to each of our students to be able to come in, but we know that that's not always the case. We know that parents or caregivers don't always participate in that process. And so it is nice to hear the thoughtfulness you all are putting behind that, and really trying to get out to capture as much of the community as we can to help kind of manage that data, even though we know it's a national concern, not only at GCPS but across the nation with other schools, as well as in our regular communities as well. So this is great data. I looked through all the numbers in my free time this week. That I knew you had a whole other presentation that you sent to us in our folder. But thank you for bringing these numbers to light, and appreciate all the hard work you all are doing. And thank you, Principal Bussey.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this presentation. Thank you, Ms. Bussey, for your presentation and sharing on the ground evidence of impact around discipline. And I truly appreciate some of the information you shared, specifically related to relationships, accountability, and restoration, your focus on meaningful consequences, lessons learned, reducing the repeat behavior, or eliminating repeat behavior rather, and really focusing on recognizing compassion and empathy, and holding accountable the students who are committing the infractions. And I do think that it's important for us to hold this both and when we are engaging with discipline. Discipline means to teach. Discipline, and typically we have data nationally that talks about how punitive discipline really doesn't serve the needs of our students. And when we do restorative practices, I think it's important for people to truly understand what restorative practices are, and that it doesn't mean that they don't have consequences. It's not a slap on the wrist, come back to school. It is how do we ensure that our students are present in class and receiving the learning that they need to receive? And how do we also teach them not to engage in these behaviors? And I just wanted to commend you on sharing that, and I wanted to also highlight some of those points that you shared. The way the presentation was conducted, I really appreciate the SWOTs. We've frankly, we've asked often about, well, what are we going to do about things? And so the opportunities, I think, I really appreciated that you presented that, and I also appreciated the information related to our strategic plan and how you connected our strategic plan, in particular equity, in this. So, having said all of that, I want to first focus on the data. And the data isn't all as detailed in the presentation that you presented, but we have the data as board members as a separate attachment. And in the data, what we are seeing clearly, and you also mentioned this in the report, is that we have a disproportionate representation of Black students. So we have, in particular, when we have 33%, if I'm not mistaken, of our Black students in all of GCPS, and we have 34% of Hispanic. But when we look at the information related to the high school students in ISS, it's about 40.9%. OSS, it's 48.6%. And tribunals, it's 60.9%. Holding that, understanding that our population is about 33% Black students. Then we look at the middle school, where it is 44.9% ISS, 45.5% OSS, and the tribunals are 45.7%. Then we go to elementary school, again, holding true that the population is 33%, ISS 53.2% in elementary, OSS 52.2%, and tribunals about 66.7%. So what I immediately think about is all of the intersectional needs of our community and how critical belonging is when it comes to really engaging the needs of our students. And the anti-Blackness that people experience in our communities, in the workplace, even in our school system is real. And I think that some of this data is reflecting an unconscious or conscious anti-Blackness. And I think it's important for us to recognize that biases can be inherent in some of the processes and how we discipline. For example, I have a question around when we say Rule 1DB, disrupting class, middle school, we have that as the top infraction. And then when we also look at the correlation of that is predominantly Black students. And so then my question is, well, what does that look like? What is disrupting class? Then when you think about unconscious biases and unconscious anti-Blackness in particular, that may influence some of those numbers. And so I wonder strategically, what are we doing in our school system to intentionally address the anti-Blackness that could be related in the data? Training, is it just online? Is it in person? Is it a trainer-trainer model? Can you talk more around how are we specifically addressing changing the culture and climate of our school system, but specifically addressing unconscious biases and anti-Blackness?
Thank you for your question, and I think Mr. Caldwell is ready to respond.
Good afternoon. So we probably didn't name it unconsciously biasness, but one of the things that we do to support our PBIS teams is we make sure that our schools identify what we call the 3 Ds: disrespect, defiance, and disturbance, right? And so we really want to make sure that our schools understand and are trained in what does disrespect look like in our building? What does disrespect look like in the classroom? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? What does defiance sound like? What does it feel like in the classroom? And our schools identify and put that on their PBIS classroom matrix as it relates to their flow chart. So now as a teacher, I know that this is a classroom managed defiance. This might be an office managed defiance because we define it as a school, and all of our teachers understand what we said that defiance or disrespect looks like in our building.
So we know that bias exists. We all have it. We also recognize that and we take ownership for what the data says. And so I want you to hear, Dr. Therese, clearly that we are committed to this work. The partnership that we have with Dr. Welsh. As a matter of fact, Mr. Nebel had a chance to be on a call with Dr. Welsh and myself just last week. He welcomes the opportunity to come back and talk with you as a board. We'll continue to engage him. That's one of the strategies that we've committed to with him, is to address disproportionality. And so not only will we learn what's happening here in Gwinnett, but through some convenings, we'll also learn what other school systems like us, in terms of size and scope and scale, may be experiencing, so that we can look at evidence-based best practices around that. So we are addressing that some and now, but we are committed to really enhancing that work to reduce that disproportionality.
Have you all extrapolated the information related to disrupting class?
Say more. In terms of
That is one
days
of the top.
missed?
Yeah, no. Disrupting class is one of the top
Yes.
rule
So-
violations, and so I just wonder what that looks like, and if you've extrapolated more information related to that.
Yes, ma'am. So we recognize that some of our rule violations may be more subjective than others. A fight's a fight, right?
Yeah.
That's a very objective rule violation. And so that really gets into some of the work that Mr. Caldwell was speaking to, understanding culture, right? And culture's not always based on race. There's so many intersectionalities of geography, right? So being raised in the North, being raised on the West Coast, being raised in the South, may be the same race, but cultural expectations may be a little different. Or even the intersectionality of our international students versus our domestic students. And so those are all things that we're actually looking at now from a cultural standpoint, understanding our biases. And Dr. Welsh, again, is helping us unpack that so that we can then take that to our schools, our staff, and better equip them with tools they need to be less subjective and more objective.
Okay. So in the presentation, I see the opportunities, and I just didn't really see a really intentional focus around intensive training around understanding the cultural nuances and unconscious biases that come into play when we're looking at such a disproportionality in particular our Black students, and trying to understand that more. And I think that there is certainly an opportunity to have some concentrated learning around what that could look like, and how even we as Black people can perpetuate anti-Blackness, right? And there are studies of Black teachers and Black administrators also engaging in more harsh treatment and punitive consequences than other races. And so when we study that data and understand part of the multi-pronged approach is certainly addressing head-on, unapologetically, the biases that occur that we all, even as Black people and people of color, hold. So I do think that could be something for us to continue to look at as an opportunity. I have a question also around the outliers. So my question around looking at the data before COVID and after COVID. In the information you provided, I didn't see 2017 data that can then lead into how we see this overall picture pre-COVID and post-COVID, because we know pre-COVID, the data looked very differently than post-COVID. And I would like to kind of see that in the chart, and then also understand that there are, of course, investments that we've made around social emotional learning. We know that some of our students are experiencing things emotionally, mentally, that are impacting them and their behaviors. And so I just wonder, looking at the data around behavior and race and trying to correlate that to the services that are being offered around social emotional learning, are we seeing that there's more of a demand around the Black students, around SEL, around of some of the impacts? When we look at the data right now, in our nation, we see that our community, in particular the Black community, is being significantly impacted on so many different levels. Our Hispanic community is being terrorized on so many different levels, or not just Hispanic, immigrant community, rather. And so that's all also a part of how the children show up. And when they don't feel belonging, when they don't feel safe, when, words become wrong and people are afraid of saying diversity, equity, or inclusion, how that impacts our children and their mental health and their sense of belonging and their sense of safety and their identity. And I do believe that that can impact their presence in the environment. And so I just wonder, how have we looked at that data? And I'm looking at you, Dr. Parker, here, but how have we really looked at that data to analyze this is the disproportionate use of the SEL or needs of SEL is greater represented in our Black and Hispanic community, and also correlating that to what's happening in society, that again, we can't control everything, but what can we do around our partnerships in the community, around in working with other organizations to help then bridge that issue that certainly they're bringing into the classroom that's impacting behavior. Y'all got me, right?
Yeah.
Y'all? Okay.
You said a lot, and we
Circular.
got it. Yes, ma'am.
Have y'all looked at it?
We continue to look at it. And so,
So yes, we look at data. So not all mental health concerns or issues derive from like a discipline concern.
I understand.
So when we are serving students based on a mental health need, it typically does not arise from the discipline office. It typically is a self-reported or an identified mental health concern. Now, what we have done in terms of trying to be culturally aware and more attentive to that is we've been very strategic with our hiring practices. So as you mentioned, working with other outside agencies, we, about 3 years ago, were only and solely working with an internal, well, not internal, but a regional Viewpoint as one of our service providers. We did see the need, we needed to expand, and we needed an organization that could bring in new therapists and have therapists that were different cultures, different religions, kind of on demand. And so we outsourced or added to that wraparound agency support Stepping Stone, who's been able to provide us therapists that are Hispanic, therapists that speak multiple languages, so that when we do have kids that are find themselves in more cultural nuanced situations and need more cultural nuanced support, that we have someone available for them. But we certainly are all on board and welcomed into supporting discipline as everyone in the district is, and we certainly can engage in more conversations with Mr. Welch around some of the nuances that you spoke to. But for our cultural support, we really have focused on making sure that we have therapists that represent different cultures, because children at that level really need someone that they feel like they would connect with before they engage in that service. And that service is also a service that has to be approved by the parent. The parent has to agree to allowing that student into that support.
I agree. Thank you for sharing that. The connection to that is certainly aligned with our core commitments and beliefs, that the statement around building strong communities and strong schools is rooted in the sense of belonging and connection and authentic engagement. So all of what you said certainly can help with that. And I want to encourage our system, our school system, to continue to look at that and to courageously hold accountable, teach the children not to repeat the same behaviors. When my child makes a mistake, I will provide consequences and also teach them how not to repeat the same mistake. Consequences are important in lessons learned, so children will make mistakes in life. How can they learn and grow from it? And how do we also recognize that there may be some nuances that are cultural in nature that may also impact the sense of belonging, acceptance, and love that is coming from outside of the community, that then is also represented inside of the school system? It is what it is, and how do we continue to help make sure that they feel like they're safe and they truly feel belonging in our school system?
yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank you again for the very thorough presentation and the information sent to us in advance. It's really appreciated. Principal Bussey, your quote really impacted me. If you can't manage them, you can't teach them. If you can't build relationships, you can't reach them. So very true. as a former teacher, that really resonates with me. And that last part about building relationships to reach them, I feel is at the core of the restorative practices and the culture that we're talking about here today. I think it's less about making students fit our school culture and more about embracing the cultures that they bring to create a culture at the school that works for everyone. So I appreciate your attentiveness there and your intentionality and the level of detail that you've shared with us today. It really makes me proud to know that we have leaders that are taking the time to become experts in and of themselves around this very topic because of the importance of first getting students to feel welcomed so that they are open to learning. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll try to be quick because I know we're over. I see you texting, Dr. Taylor. Okay, first question. I think this is a very quick answer. I'm wondering how the behavior specialists are assigned. What's the criteria? I hear you all saying there were 551 coaching cycles. You're looking to up and amp that. How do you determine when and where they're assigned?
Yeah, great question. So it's initiated by schools at this point, coming through administrators. But I'll let Mr. Caldwell just explain it in a little more in detail in terms of clusters they may be assigned to and how that process looks.
Yeah, so thank you for the question. And this goes back to when our office first started 3 years ago. We had 15 coaches. Now we're down to 11. So we've had to maybe kind of reorg some of our coaches. But like Mr. Thigpen said, our behavior coaching cycles, our teacher coaching cycles come from administrative requested. A lot of times, so teachers will actually go to the principal and say, hey, I need some support. And then the principal will reach out to our office and say, hey, can we come in and support this teacher with a coaching cycle? And the coaching cycle always starts with an initial conversation. It's about getting to know the teacher. One of the things we tell administrators, we want it to feel like true coaching. It's not evaluative. We want them to feel like they can trust us and get better at their job. And so we start off with the initial conversation. And then we come in with an actual classroom observation, and then we follow up with feedback, and sometimes that leads to an additional observation. Sometimes it leads to us seeing some students that we might need to be able to support with a student observation and be a thought partner with the teacher as well. So we kind of take those coaching cycles as they come from administrative staff. They usually hit us up through our booking link, our Microsoft booking link, and that's how we kind of keep it organized in that manner.
Thank you so very much. This next question is a little more loaded, and if you need to follow up in an email, completely understand. I'm wondering if you can share with the board and the community. You've mentioned working with Dr. Welch. How long have we been working with Dr. Welch? What are the goals that have been set forth? I know last summer we had a presentation, so I'm trying to get to what goals did we establish when we started working with him? How are we monitoring the progress? How are we planning to continue to address what we see as these opportunities and threats? So can you give us a more of a bird's eye view of that work? And specifically, how are we monitoring the progress? Do we have specific, measurable, relevant goals in place around this work?
Excellent question. And just so you know, I think you may know this, but you talked about the community as well. Dr. Welch was available to come in August, but our schedule in August is full. And so we're working on finding a time for him to be able to come and to speak with you as a board so that not only can you hear about the progress that we've made, the monitoring of the data, the commitment that we have to the work, how long we've been working with him, how long we have the relationship established for currently. You will also be able to dig in some of the data with him as well. So to your point, maybe an email, we can give you more detail about that, but know that we are committed to bringing him back to speak in front of you as a board about that work.
Okay, so just wanting to, we'll put a pin in that, but I'm really interested in what are the specific goals and how are we measuring our progress toward those goals is really essential. And I think, at a larger scale, or more broadly speaking, this may be the case for a research paper or white paper or some sort that GCPS is able to share in terms of how the work we're doing with Dr. Welch helped to turn around the disciplinary status of GCPS. If we're seeing that, maybe not this year, but in the next couple of years, where we are able to create more parity between the levels of discipline across subgroups, whether it's female, male, whether it's across, as Mr. Knudsen mentioned, maybe we're looking at the income levels, and maybe we're creating more parity across racial lines so that there's not this, as Dr. Sharice read the stats earlier, and so did Ms. Stone. So there's not this disparity across our student subgroups. If we are able to demonstrate some progress there, I think it would be great for us to make sure we're documenting that in a way that we can share it with other school districts, because this is not light work. It is very intentional, multifaceted, and I hope and I'm reassured that the district is actually documenting the steps along the way, and that's why I'm asking you all to share in public what are the goals, what are the steps, how are we tracking, so that we don't lose all of this work that's happening, this good work that's happening, and working to try to turn things around. My last question, in thinking about our elementary school students, and also in visiting classrooms, not even at the elementary school level, but high school. I know this past year in visiting some schools, there were some principals that were really adamant about sharing the intentionality behind decreasing time of students on laptops and wanting to create more interaction across students. I think during COVID, students became very reliant on devices. And maybe unintentionally, some teachers still heavily rely on students working on laptops independently. We know that students bring a number of different learning styles. I'm curious around elementary school because they have a lot of energy. Are we monitoring if those disruptions are happening when they're expected to be working on a laptop? Is that something that the district has been curious about? Because it's certainly something I'm curious about.
Excellent question, great point, and I think it's something, to your point, we're more curious about. I'm not sure if we have a definitive data point around it at this point where we could say how it's happening, when it's happening, coupled with, electronic devices or not, but it is something that we have a lot of questions about as well, especially post-pandemic. And so we do know it contributes to the social engagement that our students may have, but how it's impacting our data right now is something that we're asking questions more about.
Yep, so just a final thought there is, again, wanting to reiterate the interest in, of course, not just analyzing the racial disparities, but the gender disparities as well. I can't say for certain that there are more boys that are being disciplined at elementary school, because I don't know if we got the breakdown by gender. But I know that in my experience and as a mom, sometimes boys tend to be more busier than girls, not all the time. And that might be a stereotype. But in my home is the case. And again, I've been a teacher. So just wanting to, again, think through if there are other ways to even collect and analyze the data to try to pinpoint root causes. And I'm very interested in if the use of devices has created a root cause that we're not aware of, because we know that students have different learning styles, and some of them thrive off of social interaction that I have seen being pulled out of some classrooms, again, maybe not intentionally, but because of the introduction of devices. And with that, thank you all so very much. This was very enlightening. And Dr. Taylor, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thigpen, Caldwell, and Ms. Bussey. And actually, Dr. Simmons, to your last point, we have seen some anecdotal information shared from other schools and districts that have already implemented the cell phone bans. They're seeing pretty consistent reductions in disruptive type behaviors across the board. crossing every student group and such. And so I think there may be something to what your question that we do need to dig in a little bit deeper with. All right, so next we'll have Mr. Nebel continue with the next presentation, and he will introduce and present the team members who support this presentation.
All right, thank you, Dr. Taylor. I want to now turn our attention to our second presentation today, and that's on student attendance. I want to point out first that this presentation is a shared one. And I want to begin by thanking Chief Harmon, who we'll actually hear from first today, and her team for their work in not only securing the data, but also the support they provided throughout the development of this presentation. In addition to Chief Harmon, our presentation today will be led by Dr. Tanisha Parker, our Executive Director of the Department of Student Services, and Ms. Crystal Baskerville, the Director of Health and Social Services. I want to kind of do a quick walk through the purpose of our time together today, and that is to share some key insights from the past year's student attendance data, to explore its connection to academic performance, to reaffirm our shared commitment to fostering supportive environments, programs, and practices that promote consistent attendance and reduce chronic absenteeism across the district. And before we begin, I just want to make an important note, some context around the presentation and the data you'll see today. The attendance data that we'll share for the 2025 school year is estimated data, as final data from the state is typically not available till after August. Additionally, when we work to establish that correlation, that relationship between attendance and academic performance, we'll be referencing prior year GMAS data, as current year GMAS results remain under state embargo. So while some of the data that's presented today will be preliminary or from previous year, it still provides valuable insights that we feel support the goals of today's presentation. So with that in mind, our time together today is designed to do the following things that you see listed in front of you: a breakdown of student attendance by student group, longitudinally over the past 5 years, the course of the past 5 years, an analysis of the connection between attendance and school performance, a summary of our current work around attendance and its impact, an overview of next steps, and of course an open forum, a time for you guys to provide us with questions and thoughts. Our presentation today will align with our Blueprint Goal 1B, student and staff well-being, with a specific focus on student well-being and the issue of chronic absenteeism. Relevant KPI information will be presented in an ongoing fashion throughout the presentation. So this is kind of how our presentation will be structured. All right, we'll have a data review here in this beginning portion, followed by some key definitions, a look at prior year attendance law and where we're heading with some of the changes that we see, and some of the contributing factors that we feel contribute to the attendance rates that we're seeing in our buildings. A look at our action steps to include some research review and recommendations and implementation in our buildings. And finally, a look ahead. As I said, a preview of the updated state law, some recognition, and some enhanced requirements and supports. So with that overview, I want to begin by bringing Chief Harmon to the podium. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Nebel. Good afternoon, Chairperson Dr. Simmons, members of the board, and Dr. Taylor. It's a pleasure to be here, and we're going to jump right in. What you see here is some longitudinal data looking at the difference in ELA milestones performance for students who are chronically absent compared to students who are not chronically absent. Although Dr. Parker is going to give you some detailed explanations about the definitions of chronic absenteeism. I just want to quickly say here that chronic absenteeism in this data is defined as students who are absent for any reason more than 10% of their enrolled days. So that's what that line shows. So it's not surprising that we would see a significant difference in performance and proficient distinguished percentages for students who are chronically absent compared to their student colleagues who are not chronically absent. What is most interesting in this is in how you can tell that the relationship is driven somewhat by that attendance, is that the shape of the line remains the same regardless of, the movement. So that's how you can tell that there's a relationship happening there, is that the shape remains the same. So we're going to move forward. We'll go back, too many times. Math milestones performance, similar thing. So obviously, our chronically absent students perform lower over time. not a surprise, an established relationship. And the shape of the line remains the same, again. So you can see and derive from that a little bit that attendance may be driving some of that performance difference between the two groups. Then we go to our comparisons. So what you see here are national, state, and our local comparison of percent of students chronically absent over time. I will say that the national data source is only as recent as the 23 school year, but we have official data from GOSA up to school year 24. So that's what we're showing here. And interestingly enough, the shape of the line is the same, even though we're talking regional, statewide, and national. That was just an interesting note to me of the performance ticks over time for chronically absent students. Obviously, because chronic absenteeism is for any absence, it's not surprising that those ticks jump up post-COVID when students are back enrolled and we're in person in that 22 school year. Slight acknowledgement to the bottom left corner is our KPI goal for 24 of 14.5. Our actual performance for 24 was 19.9. That's the data you see there. We always call out our KPIs in our presentations as we go through. And now we see chronic absenteeism in the district by grade level. So obviously you see our three academic levels, elementary, middle, high, and within that are broken out the grade levels within each. Pay attention again to the shape of the line. And you can see here that the attendance performance is very different for our kindergartners. And then it tends to get better. Those habits of attendance improve as they get to fifth grade. Fifth grade launches them into sixth grade. They still have that residual excitement and engagement in school. And you see chronic absenteeism tend to tick up just a little as they head into eighth grade. They launch them into ninth grade in their freshman year in high school. Again, you see that kind of lowest performance in ninth grade. And then as they get to their senior year, for a myriad of reasons, chronic absenteeism ticks up. Again, reminding you that chronic absenteeism is for any absence. So you have to think about all those things with college tours and all of those pieces. It's not surprising that as students progress through higher grade levels, there's more reasons to be absent. And so now you see chronic absenteeism by race and ethnicity. And so, again, shape of the line in general is the same, regardless of race or ethnicity, with the exception of our American Indian population. And with that population, I would say that it's probably driven by a very small number of children. So remember that we report data for student groups larger than 15. So if there are 16 students in this group, and I'm not saying it's exactly 16, but it's a very small number driving that line compared to hundreds and thousands of students in the other line. So one or two students' attendance behavior could drastically shape that line differently than the others. And then here's our chronic absenteeism by student groups. To your left, you see our multilingual learners and then not multilingual learners. And then to your right, you see the students with disabilities and not students with disabilities. And then here you see chronic absenteeism by two other student groups. You have your economically disadvantaged, that's the federal state definition for students who are receiving free or reduced lunch. And then you see our gifted and non-gifted percentages. And last but not least on our data walk, you see kind of a Georgia comparison of chronic absence over a period of time. So what you see here are some of the larger school districts that we compare ourselves to. But as we were going through this, what was most interesting was that in each of those large school districts sits a city school district structure. So you have the city school district sitting nestled within that larger school district. So for us, that's Buford. For Fulton, that's Atlanta. For Cobb, it's Marietta City. And for DeKalb, it's Decatur City. And then you have the state of Georgia with a rough approximation, so an even number approximation of the number of students served in that district. None of those are the exact number of students served during that year. What's interesting in this is that the low water mark for every school district was the year of COVID hit, and we closed our schools and removed in-person instruction. That's surprising, and I think that would be our kind of data anomaly. Although it appears to be the consistent low water mark for every school district, it's not the real low water mark. I would say that the real low water mark is probably 2018. For lots of reasons, taking attendance was difficult in 2020, and a lot of school districts gave students the benefit of the doubt of presence. As you can see moving forward, the high water mark and when a school district hit that just depends. Probably on the perceptions, actions, activities of the school district. None of them were consistent across the board. Overall, for the state of Georgia, though, we hit our high water mark collectively in 22, in the 21-22 school year. And that's the end of our data walk. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Parker, and she's going to walk you through the definitions and the work around chronic absenteeism.
Thank you, Dr. Harmon. Let me see if the clicker works because I'm not as coordinated as my colleagues. Oh, it does. Thank you. All right. Good afternoon, Chairman Simpson, board members, and Dr. Taylor. We're going to take a look at the difference between truancy and chronic absence. In Georgia, a student is considered truant if they have more than 5 unexcused absences during the school year. This applies to any child covered under the state's compulsory attendance law, meaning any student between the ages of 6 and 16 or kindergartners who've been enrolled more than 20 days. As a reminder, chronic absence refers to the total number of days a student misses, excused or unexcused. A student is considered chronically absent if they miss 10% or more of their enrolled days. For example, if a student is enrolled for all 180 days of the school year, they're chronically absent if they miss 18 or more days for any reason. The takeaway from this is that truancy focuses on unexcused absences, while chronic absence looks at both, regardless of the reason. In Georgia, we have 2 categories of absences. Some are excused, but only under specific conditions defined by law. An excused absence means absent for a reason the state recognizes as valid. Some examples include personal illness when a student is sick or unable to attend school, a serious illness or death of the immediate family member, hazardous conditions such as unsafe weather or travel conditions, and the observance of religious holidays that are part of a family's faith tradition. It's important to remember that an unexcused absence still counts as a missed day and counts towards chronic absenteeism. Absences for any other reason outside of the definition provided by the attendance law is unexcused. The attendance law you see on the screen was revised on June 30th. And shifted from solely addressing truancy, which are, remember, unexcused absences, to addressing chronic absenteeism, both types. The data we've reviewed and the interventions and supports we've leveraged through the years were in compliance with the regulations to this law. Later, we will discuss in more detail the revisions to this law. However, fortunately for our district, we knew that the impact of unexcused and excused absences are the same. Therefore, we extended our practices and supports when we could to beyond solely truancy support. Now let's look at the breakdown of how our student absences fall within the absence category. The graph on the screen shows the total count of absences over time, broken out proportionately into excused and unexcused absence type. Under the former law, we were required to focus our attention on the unexcused absences. You can see that in some cases, particularly in our elementary and middle school data, our excused absences rivaled or outpaced our unexcused absences, sorry. At the high school level, however, we see that the unexcused absences is the majority absence type throughout the years. With each grade level, we see how the addition of excused absences will increase the need for support. Our former processes and procedures were designed to address excused absences, but will expand to strategically support both excused and unexcused absences beginning this school year. So why are our kids absent? Chronic absenteeism isn't just about missing school. It's often the result of deeper challenges students face. Common contributing factors include barriers like transportation issues, health concerns, or unstable housing. Negative school experiences that push students away include bullying, feeling unsafe, and the lack of meaningful connections or engagement. When students don't see relevance in their learning or feel disconnected from their peers and school community, they practice avoidance behaviors, not attending school. Add to that the misconception that missing just a few days here or there doesn't really matter. But we know when students are absent, they miss valuable academic instruction. They fall behind on important interventions meant to support their academic, social, and emotional growth, and they lose out on vital socialization opportunities that help build internal confidence and connections with their peers and teachers. In almost every case, the longer a student is out, the harder it becomes to catch up. So what did we do? The district, the Department of Student Services, in collaboration with the Office of Research and Evaluation and Analytics, Data Governance, Federal Programs, and the Engagement Division, engaged in action-based oriented discussions and planning to more comprehensively address our district's attendance challenges. We began by analyzing attendance data to understand district-wide trends and local needs, which helped us identify unique patterns in areas requiring support. We then explored targeted evidence-based interventions, considering both successful practices from other districts and what was feasible for our teams, ensuring alignment with the Georgia attendance law. Ultimately, we developed a coordinated multidisciplinary approach to provide data-driven support for students and families. I'll now turn it over to Ms. Baskerville, our Health and Social Service Director, to continue with our presentation.
Good afternoon, Chairman Dr. Simmons, members of the board, and Dr. Taylor. As we collaborated across departments and leaned into our internal research, GCPS has been able to identify 5 key areas that can truly make a difference in improving student attendance across the district. These areas of focus are grounded in thorough analysis of our own attendance data, the latest research on effective strategies, and guidance from national and professional organizations that specialize in addressing chronic absenteeism. Now, while our research is still ongoing, the 5 areas I'm about to share represent the most promising strategies we've found so far to support consistent student attendance. First, we'll start with leveraging MTSS teams. The MTSS framework, this means making sure attendance is being addressed through organized, data-informed interventions. To improve school culture and climate, we work to reduce suspensions and build a more positive, welcoming school environment, one that encourages students to show up and feel connected every single day. We looked at broadening attendance awareness. We wanted to expand the impact of Attendance Awareness Month, aiming to build a district-wide culture that values regular attendance and celebrates the role it plays in student success. The use of attendance nudges. We strategized how we could use our current communication sources to send timely, personalized messages to families, small strategic reminders that have been shown to positively influence attendance behavior. And finally, we knew we needed to increase access to mental health services to help address emotional, psychological, and social challenges that can often stand in the way of consistent attendance. So now that you've heard the overall strategy and the key focus areas, I would like to walk you through each of the 5 in more detail and share specific actions we implemented over the past school year. To bring our board's theory of action to life in a meaningful way, we focus on implementing MTSS with a high degree of fidelity. This framework ensures we're responding to students' learning and engagement challenges using research-based, evidence-informed strategies that give every student a real opportunity to succeed. Now, here's how we applied MTSS framework to address attendance across the 3 tiers of support. At the foundational level, we focused on creating a positive, proactive school environment that supports daily attendance engagement for all of our students. Key Tier 1 strategies included implementing optional comprehensive school attendance plans to establish consistent expectations and systems, applying positive behavioral interventions and supports, what we know as PBIS, to reinforce strong inclusion within a school climate, strengthening our advisement program to build meaningful student-teacher relationships, and utilizing tools such as our EES survey to identify needs early and respond before problems escalated. When students began to show early signs of attendance concerns, we activated Tier 2 supports. Now, these supports are targeted interventions tailored to individual needs. This included regular check-ins with our social workers and our counselors, customized school-based intervention plans, and involvement in SARC meetings, what are called Student Attendance Review Committees. This is where we developed and coordinated student-centered action plans. Now, for the students that showed significant ongoing absenteeism, we then delivered Tier 3 supports. This is the intensive, collaborative strategies to re-engage students and support our families. These actions included participation in truancy court, when applicable, participation in truancy review intervention panel, which we call TRIP, and connection to community agencies and wraparound services to address barriers outside of the classroom. Now, by implementing the MTSS framework consistently across all tiers, we ensured that every single student, regardless of their circumstance, had access to the right support at the right time. This structured, data-informed approach played a vital role in strengthening attendance and keeping students engaged in their learning journey. Now, let's take a closer look at the critical connection between school culture and attendance. Research consistently shows that when students feel safe, supported, and valued, they are much more likely to attend school consistently and to succeed academically. One study titled Using School Climate to Improve Attendance and Grades underscores this very point. It found that positive school climate and a strong sense of student satisfaction directly influences both attendance and academic performance. At GCPS, we took these findings to heart and implemented a comprehensive set of strategies this past school year to improve school climate and culture with the goal of boosting our attendance. Key initiatives implemented were that we delivered customized lessons across grade levels, emphasizing the importance of attendance. In addition, we required advisement content focused on managing stress, anxiety, and depression, all challenges that we know can impact our students' engagement. We invested in targeted professional development to help educators foster positive, engaging, and well-managed classrooms. Now, some of those topics included 5 tools of classroom management and sessions on planning, teacher expectations and procedures, and starting the year off right. School administrators and attendance team members received specialized training aimed at improving their ability to support and address attendance challenges proactively. We provided over 500 coaching cycles to teachers, offered both by request and through administrative recommendation. These cycles focused on strategies such as rapport building, classroom structure, de-escalation, and student engagement. As a part of PBIS framework, we included specific recognition systems and incentives tied to consistent attendance, reinforcing that culture where showing up is celebrated. All of these efforts were a part of a broader, more intentional approach, creating schools where students feel respected, connected, and empowered. Creating schools our students generally want to attend. And as research has taught us, when we get school culture right, improved attendance naturally follows. Last school year, through a coordinated cross-divisional effort, we launched a district-wide attendance awareness campaign titled Every Day Counts in GCPS. The goal of this initiative was to elevate awareness of the academic and social impacts of absenteeism, while building a shared understanding among students, families, staff, and our community partners about the critical importance of regular attendance. Our message was very clear and consistent. Every day counts. When students miss school, they miss out. Each month, we featured specific focus such as health, transportation, motivation, and other factors influencing attendance to help tailor messaging and outreach. We developed and distributed translated tip sheets and guidance materials to ensure families across the district could engage with the campaign in a meaningful way. We leveraged social media, family newsletters, and features on GCPS TV to promote key messages and resources throughout the school year. We highlighted schools and students making progress with attendance through celebration and recognition efforts, reinforcing, again, the culture that values showing up and being present. To evaluate the campaign's reach and effectiveness, we tracked attendance data, engagement analytics, and collected feedback from our stakeholders. One key takeaway was the challenge of communication overload. With so much information competing for attention, we learned that the importance of delivering messages through multiple channels and formats, consistently and repeatedly to ensure they're seen and heard. The Everyday Counts campaign laid the foundation for district-wide culture of attendance. And as we move forward, we were committed to building on this continued momentum to refine strategies and continued outreach. As a part of the ongoing work to boost student attendance and strengthen family engagement, we've been using Parent Square, which is our district-wide communication platform, in a more strategic and targeted way. We know from the national research that attendance nudges, those timely reminders and messages, work. They've been shown to increase student attendance by keeping families informed and involved. So, we put the research into practice. We created a system of tiered attendance notifications, each one tied to specific numbers of absences. The goal here was very simple: reach families early, communicate clearly, and offer support, not just a consequence. So, at 5 unexcused absences, we sent both paper and electronic notifications to over 79,000 families. For 10 absences or more, we sent notification to 30,000 families. And for 15 unexcused absences, we did 15,000 distributions. So through these targeted nudges, we're not just raising the awareness, we're building a culture of attendance. We're strengthening the partnership between home and school, and we're making sure families have the tools they need to support their child's success. Let's talk about something lastly we all know to be true. When students feel supported, mentally, physically, and emotionally, they are far more likely to show up, stay engaged, and succeed. That simple truth has guided much of our work this past school year, especially when it comes to expanding our mental and physical health supports within GCPS. We know the connection between well-being and attendance is strong. A study conducted by Transformation Waco found that 65% of students who receive at least one wraparound service improved their attendance from the previous year. So what have we done to support this progress? We've made a focused effort to meet the growing mental needs of our students right inside of the school. Through expanded partnerships with Viewpoint Health, as well as Stepping Stones, these professionals are providing individual and group counseling, crisis intervention, and overall mental health support right on campus. This means that students can access without leaving school and minimize the loss of valuable instructional time. We've also broadened the reach of our wraparound supports, which help not just students, but their families too. We've worked with partners such as Kate's Club, offering grief support, Streetwise, helping families to meet basic needs, One Stop for Help, connecting families to vital services, Mosaic, who provide trauma-informed support, as well as ensure 24/7 crisis support through our Georgia Crisis and Access line. Of course, we do know physical health also plays a huge role in student attendance and readiness to learn. That's why, guided by the expertise of our cluster nurses and our school staff, we've expanded access to medical care through strong partnerships with trusted providers. Vision to Learn conducts screenings and provides free eyeglasses to our students. Good Samaritan Health Center offers primary care and wellness of services. Children's Healthcare of Atlanta supports pediatric health programming, and our county health department provides immunizations and screenings right within school. This is more than just expanding services. It's about removing the barriers that keep our students from coming to school and staying there. It's about creating an environment where every student feels seen, feels safe, and supported. By investing in the whole child from mental and physical health, as well as their basic needs, we're ensuring that more students are not only showing up, but they're ready to learn and to thrive. So now that you've heard about the work we've implemented, work that is grounded in research, collaboration, and the belief that every student deserves the opportunity to thrive, we want to be very clear. This is just the beginning. Improving attendance isn't a one-time initiative. It's an ongoing journey. We know there's more to learn, and there's definitely more to refine and more to build upon. That's why we're now focusing on looking ahead, still using some of these key areas as we move forward. The areas that we believe will have the greatest impact on student attendance and long-term success. With these areas guiding our next steps, we're confident we can continue making meaningful progress. So with that said, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Parker, who will share more about how we plan to build on this momentum and deepen our impact in the year ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Baskerville. We'll first discuss our compliance and regulatory efforts to align with the new law in DOE. As of July 1st, 2025, Georgia law redefines excessive absences to include all forms of chronic absenteeism, unexcused and excused absences. Now, students missing 10% or more of enrolled days, regardless of excuse or not, are considered chronically absent and require intervention. This shift reflects a broader understanding that every missed day impacts student success. The law also increases accountability by requiring districts to develop strategic, resource-conscious processes, including robust data systems, digital communication tools, and coordinated team protocols. It specifically outlines that districts with a 10% or higher chronic absenteeism rate must create and maintain an attendance review team. Additionally, schools exceeding a chronic absenteeism rate of 15% must also establish their own attendance review team. While this regulates a needed comprehensive approach, it also expands support requirements. However, our district is well prepared. Many of the new requirements mirror our existing practices, such as district and school level attendance teams and consistent family engagement. The primary change for our district will be extending these supports to include excused absences. As we leverage our resources differently and broaden our support, We will continue to collaborate with internal and external partners to align our efforts and to elevate attendance awareness and support across our community. Beginning with the 25-26 school year, the Georgia Department of Education is transitioning from the current PBIS recognition system to a more comprehensive model, Georgia MTSS, or Georgia's multi-tiered system of supports. This new system recognizes school success is not just about behavior, but also in the areas of academics and attendance. Schools can earn points in each category, and for attendance, schools must meet one of the following two benchmarks. First, they can reach the target of 80% to 100% of their students missing less than 10% of their enrolled days, or they must show measurable improvement, specifically by increasing the percentage of students missing less than 10% by 3% or more over the 24-25 school year. This shift emphasizes that regular attendance is just as critical as academic and behavioral success. And schools that show success or gains in this area will receive points toward the program. To plan and prepare for this shift, our multidisciplinary district MTSS team, which includes our behavior, mental health, and academic intervention leaders, have attended all state meetings and met frequently as an internal team to discuss our comprehensive approach. The next slides will speak to our enhanced efforts focused on attendance. To address chronic absenteeism, we are strengthening support across all levels. Beginning with the strategic use of MTSS teams. Using attendance data, we will identify schools with the highest need based on the criteria set by the state so that we may collaborate with school leaders to develop tailored intervention plans based on grade level, absence type, and community context. To keep attendance a focal point at our schools, we've updated district protocols to align with the new regulations, requiring schools to plan for, regularly monitor, and intervene on attendance data. To support consistency, our Health and Social Services team developed an attendance handbook outlining district procedures and best practices. In addition, all counselors, social workers, and administrators now complete mandatory attendance training at the beginning of the school year. Regarding enhanced family communication, we will begin sending out parent automated multilingual notifications or attendance nudges via Parent View at 3, 7, and 12 missed days. This is in addition to our 5, 10, and 15-day required letters. Parents will also be able to electronically submit absence notices via Parent View. And to strengthen our Tier 1 practices, optional attendance lessons will now be required as part of the advisement program. And our PBIS program will systematically incorporate attendance into their school recognition systems to promote a culture of showing up. In addition to strengthening our district processes, data systems, school-based interventions, and parent communication, we are also improving access to attendance resources and streamlining our website and portal for families and for staff. Our engagement division redesigned the district's attendance webpage, integrated attendance articles and parent tips into GCPS links in the webpage, and launched monthly social media campaigns to raise awareness. These practices will continue in the new year. A district-wide parent advisory council will be formed to ensure family voices help inform strategies to reduce attendance barriers. In partnership with federal programs, our parent centers will add our family-friendly attendance presentation to their catalog of presentations delivered to families annually. Finally, we will recognize the impact of mental health on attendance. And we've expanded our on-site counseling services by hiring several additional clinical therapists and streamlined our internal referral system for the upcoming school year. And we will continue to provide staff ongoing professional development opportunities in trauma-informed care and in early warning signs. These new efforts and our long-standing practices reflect our deep belief that every day counts and that all absences impact student learning. With the revised law, we reaffirm our commitment to building a system where students feel supported, families feel empowered, and staff feel prepared to support improved attendance. Thank you for your attention and the opportunity to present on this important topic. This concludes our presentation, and we now stand ready for questions.
Thank you so much. Okay, team, we are running at least 30 minutes over, so if we could just be mindful, but now's the time for questions and comments.
Thank you, Chair Dr. Simmons. I just want to say to the team, I really appreciate your willingness and commitment to using data to drive your decisions. You all identified the what. You provided us with a ton of data, and I appreciate you providing that data by grade band, elementary, middle, and high school. And I think you mentioned around making sure that we implement it with fidelity. I think with any intervention, if we're not implementing it with fidelity and consistency, then we may not see progress. So I really appreciate that. The only other comment based on time is around our targeted supports. And this is more of a comment, something that I would love to see is, for example, we know based off of the data, I took some notes here, that we've seen an increase in attendance or students missing school in our ML population, our Hispanic population, our economically disadvantaged, and our students with disabilities. So I would love to see more tailored supports addressing those unique demographics of students. So I heard, for example, that CHOA is addressing some of the health needs of some of our students, but that may not necessarily be a part of our ML and students with disabilities. And then lastly, the same thing with GIVE. I noticed that, it's one of our special schools, and the other schools are kind of hovering around the 10s and 20s of students missing school, and then the GIVE East and West centers were hovering around the 60s and 70s. So would love to see why that disparity and the root causes.
Yeah, there's a lot of data in this for sure. So thanks for all the hard work in pulling all this together. I had one interesting dynamic when I think it was Dr. Harmon talked about the Georgia chronic absence comparisons, and I saw where some really jumped in 2021, and we kind of hovered similarly, just a little bit above 2020, but then we jumped in 2022. Have we run a number or a comparison of chronic absenteeism among our students who stayed home the entire year versus those who participated in the in-school?
We have not, but that is an interesting area to explore, so.
Because I think maybe that would uncover some of the focus of our interventions moving forward. Because if many of our chronically absent kids now were those who were out the entire year, maybe we could look at ways to address what might be going on in that dynamic. So that just kind of struck me as I saw those. Have we also taken a look at some of our, I started to ask the question and then I saw all the voluminous information. Have we looked at like our top 10% of lowest percentage of chronically absent schools and their cultures and their operating procedures and compared that to those like the top highest 10%? And then have we looked at maybe some of the cultural dynamics outside the school so that we could see how we need to tailor our focus in terms of interventions?
Yes, we did. So I know you received the attachment with the research information. We actually took the schools that were listed, and I did one-on-one interviews with those schools to ask what the culture, what the climate, how frequently are you meeting. I also met with our school social workers because they are a part of the Office of Health and Social Services. So I talked to them about what those shifts were and actually implemented some of the best practices within our current attendance guide. And now some of those things that are reflected in the attendance guide will be expectations moving forward, especially for our targeted support schools.
Awesome. That's awesome. I was going to ask this, or I had a note in my head on the discipline side of things. How many, because they talked about student focus groups, how many chronically absent students have we sat down and talked to determine why, truly figure out why they're not coming to school?
Okay. I think we all have some variation of response to this. So I do know that some of our schools have, and it's happened oftentimes through our counseling departments. Some of our, when they're in their counseling small groups, because we will have attendance groups for kids that are chronically absent. And that is where those questions come about, like what's going on, what's happening at school, how can we get you to school, what would bring you, what would make you wake up and say, I can't miss today. And so those conversations do happen. Again, they were kind of organically happening. However, with some of our new requirements, there will be some things that will be put in place that will be required, particularly for schools that meet a certain, that are on the 15% or higher list.
Okay, good. That leads me to my last question, and that is, have we incorporated the explanation of the new law to our families for orientation days, for, because I think that has to be extremely robust because the new law has some teeth, it seems.
Yes, so we did work with our engagement office to make sure that everything is up to date on our website, as well as we're updating. I know Dr. Parker spoke a little bit about our trainings and development for our families. All of that information has been updated with the new law already. And so our plan of action is to make sure that in the beginning of the year meetings, things of that nature, the one-pagers that our parents do receive all reflect all of the nuances of the law, as well as the enhancements with our attendance nudges that are looking at absenteeism. We're actually putting nudges of research in there. Did you know facts for our families so that they can be aware of the true impact of chronic absenteeism?
In addition to that, we are meeting with our principals to make sure they are aware of this information and that they can also share this information with their families as they return to school. Another thing that I talked about in the presentation was a presentation an attendance presentation, family-friendly presentation, not educational speak, but some for our families that Crystal's team worked with to provide federal programs. And so our parent centers, it was available for them, but now those parent centers will add it to their catalog of presentations that they do every year, and that will be one of the earlier presentations that happens.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you all for this presentation. A lot of good data here. I obviously, at respect of our time, I don't want to go over. Just a couple things to point out. I love the partnerships y'all have in the mental health sector. That is so important with CHOA, with the Good Samaritan groups, the local county health departments. I mean, that is super, super important to have those partnerships and relationships and have our community help and assist us when they can. The one question I did have is, and being a parent of students in the school system and being logged into Parent Square, I'll get those attendance notifications if something is missed. My kid forgot to bring in the doctor note, it's marked unexcused. Is there any way that we can put something kind of front and center for the students, either through their e-class or whatever system they log into, to say, hey, you kind of front and center, you have 5 unexcused absences this semester and 2 excused absences, something front and center. I know for me, I have to go dig into the calendar and have to go see, and I see a little red mark on a particular date on the calendar. I got to dig for it. Is there an opportunity there to at least put it front and center so students and parents alike can see that data right up front and address it at the moment?
Yes, so this year what we are implementing is in the Parent View platform. Those attendance nudges will actually come out as alerts.
Okay.
And so those notations will be an alert. And then we did mention that parents can now actually reply when there is an absence. They can reply electronically now, whereas before they had to write a note and bring it in and things of that nature. So we are putting in that fix into play within Parent View so that they can review review that information. I would have to kind of lean on our data governance team to see kind of what that looks like, but we can definitely work with that team so that you could see a preview of that information.
Yeah, Mr. Gasper, the same way in Parent View that we have the attendance button and tab, that's also available in Student View. So they do have access to see their attendance record and what that looks like.
Okay, super, and I love that it'll pop up, and I love that you're giving us that opportunity as parents to respond directly in the app, and I've heard a lot of thank yous down the row here, because it's super convenient for us as parents for things just like I had mentioned, students missing or forgetting to bring a note, and we can send that to you guys as well. Are you able? Kind of going back to slide number 19, Tier 3, this leveraging the MTSS teams. Have we quantified the data around Tier 3 and, the students that have ended up in this at this point where they either were in the TRIP or in truancy court, just to get a sense of what's happening there? It may be in, forgive me, it may be in what you call sent us, but I didn't see it.
Yes, so for Tier 3 support, we can provide that information. We did not provide that within your packet, but we do track. And actually, TRIP is something that we do internally as far as the district is concerned, that truancy review panel, which is kind of our last effort before transitioning students into, and it's not a required thing for truancy court. But we can definitely pull the number for you in regards to our truancy court information and our TRIP panels that are held.
Thank you. I'm just curious to see it. So
Yes.
Excellent. I appreciate it. Thank you all for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm also conscious around our time, so I do have a couple of questions, but I'm going to ask two. One is, I want to thank you for the longitudinal data. That's not a question, but it's a comment, and I do appreciate the pre-COVID information and how you shared that through present day. I also noticed that in the data, we had some of our schools that were over 40%, many 20%. And when I'm looking at where they are, many of them are situated in District 5. And so I'm curious about that and the correlation related to academic behavior and attendance. You have, I think one of your charts here, you have those three things that's like a central focus. It would be great to be able to actually see the data, because I believe that can tell a specific story related to the academic behavior, attendance, where it is. And when we see, for example, if it's, school A, B, and C, where with the longitudinal data, they continue to have high numbers in all three areas, what specifically are we doing to address that? I know you've shared some great interventions already, but my wondering is the specific interventions. For example, when I know the demographics of District 5 and the fear related to immigration and ICE, or when you think about the different cultural needs around family dynamics and different working behaviors and how some students work different hours and so forth, and so their needs may be presented differently. I just wonder the specific cultural engagement that we could do. I want to be able to have that story told, and then what are we doing specifically around addressing that cultural needs for them?
So I know that there are team members in SPA who are watching this and shaking their fist at me because they planned a robust kind of program evaluation around some of the clusters in District 5 because they had some of the highest chronic absenteeism. And I asked them to pause for just a second because at the time that they were going to go into that deep engagement of focus grouping and root cause analysis, we were wrestling with the fear issue and how we could create a safe space to have that conversation with our students and not feel like it was going to put them in harm or their family in harm to have that conversation. So it's not off the table, but we're trying to figure out how to balance that, getting to the ground truth and having that conversation of how to support, while also recognizing that there's fear in having that conversation and it could put their family in jeopardy. So but we are definitely, it's not off the table.
And one other thing I'll say about that is that in addition to how we try to strategically hire with our wraparound supports in terms of our clinicians, we do that internally as well with our social workers. We're very intentional on bilingual, different culture social workers because these are people that are having very personal conversations with families around a number of issues. And to your point around why students may not come to school, some of our cultures, if the family is working and a child is sick, are you going to go to school or is mom not going to go to work? And they have to make those decisions. And so we're very sensitive to that, and we're aware of that, and we're currently still exploring. So what we showed you right now is not all of what we intend and hope to do, but is what we know for sure we're working toward. But those things are very high on our conscience, and we certainly look forward to supporting those at greater depth in the future. But they are on our radar as well.
Thank you. I look forward to hearing more about that and specifically how we are addressing those needs because I think, again, it may look very different from one school to the next. And in particular, the two schools I'm thinking about, their needs are very unique and it's in their own way. So I'd love to be able to specifically address those two schools and figure out what we can do differently to address their needs. The last question I have is, I noticed in the data around Give Center West, we have around 61.7% chronic absenteeism, and then we have in Give East 63.2%. And so can you share more about that? I mean, we already seen some discipline data, and we also can have some correlations around absenteeism and discipline belonging. But I'm just wondering, that's significant. That's very high. What interventions that maybe are we doing there that's maybe unique to that particular environment?
Can I caution you on just one data interpreting that?
Yeah.
So the child brings their chronic absenteeism with them wherever they go. It is a summative number. So it doesn't necessarily mean that all of those days absent were at Give. It just means that Give may be the place that owned it at the end. And so it doesn't mean that it's not real. I just want to say that it's not necessarily fully a Give number to own. So just.
And that would be true for all of the schools.
Yes.
Did I just confuse that?
I mean, I'm still wondering, like.
Go ahead.
And I was just going to say, as an intervention that we've looked at is we actually have school-based school social workers at both the Give West and Give East Center. And so to the point of the discipline office looking at a transition plan, we're actually working with our counselors and our social workers to transition our students appropriately, to kind of ask the question, where are you? What do you need? What makes you have a sense of belonging and things of that nature? And so we're looking at having a whole child transition plan. So not just focus on consequences and discipline and what brought you here, but what can keep you here, what can help you academically and be sound. So that is an intervention that's unique to Give, looking at the transition, both them staying at Give as well as transitioning to a different high school.
I think what would be really important is focusing on the attendance at the Give Center, because I think that can also tell us something. I've heard feedback around the Give Center where there may be more concentrated supports and efforts. Maybe the attendance is higher there, and then maybe that can also show that there's some things that are happening that maybe we can learn from and move best practices that we can move and kind of replicate in other schools. So if we really disaggregate the data, focus on the Give Center, I think that could help us understand something too. And if it's the reverse, that can also help us. Yeah, thanks.
No, I was going to actually just say what you just said. I hear you asking us to really kind of track the specific time at Give, not, thinking when you just shared that, if you think about some of the appeals that we hear, these students have missed sometimes 40 or 50 days, so they're already chronically absent before they step foot in the Give Center. But what happens when they get there? Do we see a change in that trajectory? Are they all of a sudden present because of the supports, or does that trend kind of continue? And so I think this is it's really a good question for us to unpack, and that data point is reflected doesn't answer that question. So
We'll look into it.
I think that would also lend to this culture piece as well. If we see the attendance is better at GIVE, what are they doing to create that culture where the students want to be there? And how can we leverage that at their home schools? I think that's could provide great insight. Thank you all so much for the presentation. I perked up a couple of times, like, woo, interesting. One of the reasons I perked up is around this idea of submitting excuses via parent view. Personally, as a parent, I send a note to school, but I don't necessarily always know if it made it to the teacher. So this is very helpful, and I can see that immediately having an impact on the numbers, right? Also, I heard mention of a district-wide parent advisory council and wondered if that will only be specific to attendance. I think it's a great idea. Is that going to be only specific to attendance, or is that going to be more broadly utilized to solicit input from parents?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Simmons. So this, the Parent Advisory Council was called out in Dr. Taylor's transition plan. And so we are getting ready to launch this. You'll get full details in your weekly board update tomorrow. We have some action items that we're asking for the board's help in selecting and appointing some members from each board district area. But it'll be open district-wide, and it is not just one topic. There are a variety of things from some state laws and policies that we have to implement because of state law, to budget, to just things that come up, as well as perhaps the superintendent search. So it's a wide variety, but you will have the details tomorrow, and then next week we'll begin communicating district-wide.
Can it be called family engagement? Because it's more inclusive language versus parent.
Or caregiver, yeah.
Our caregiver, and I know you made some comments about that.
The last thing I wanted to touch on, I appreciated the discipline presentation being coupled with the attendance presentation. And one of the reasons why is because I believe the two are interconnected in a number of ways. I did take the liberty of actually digging a little deeper into the schools. You all provided the board with schools ordered by attendance rate or chronic absenteeism rates. And so I quickly just took a look at the schools with the highest rates. And so, for example, at elementary school, we had, let me see. For example, Rockbridge Elementary School has a 22.7% chronic absenteeism rate, if I'm reading that correctly.
That's correct.
Their multilingual learner population is 70.8%, compared to the district rate of 30%, so it's double. If I look at another school, Graves Elementary School, 22.8% chronic absenteeism rate, so that's a little over 1 in 5 students chronically absent. Their multilingual learner population is 72.6%. Another school, Berkmar High School, their absenteeism rate, if I can get my hands on that one, 48.8%. That's almost half. So almost half of the student body at Berkmar is chronically absent. And we know if kids are not in school, they're not learning. They're not learning. And so their multilingual learner population, 37.6%, compared to the district average for high school is 16%. So in each of these instances, the multilingual learner rate is twice as high as the district rate. And so for me, I'm seeing a trend. I don't know if the district has explored that relationship, but I would love to hear if you have, and what are some of the thoughts there?
That's okay. So, Dr. Simmons, the relationship is real. But I think it's deeper, leaning back to some of what Dr. Therese said. There's things coupled in that just don't rest on it being a language barrier issue. There are cultural pieces tied to that as well, and that's where some of that investigation of culturally, how might we support? It may be something as simple as, and with the new law, it doesn't matter because excused or unexcused. It might be cultural celebrations and other things and holidays, but under the new law, they're still going to show up as chronically absent. But us having a better understanding of that as a district could help. So we know that there's work to do in those areas, as Dr. Therese alluded to, but it's going to be a tougher road for a district to convince families to give up cultural beliefs or religious beliefs in lieu of this. And so we have to figure out how to navigate that, and that's where some of that investigation happens. But it is real. And ironically, I had a conversation with quite a few of those clusters, elementary principals, just 2 days ago, talking about some of this and some of their data and trying to move that work. So we are aware and we're moving in that direction.
Well, I trust that with the Parent or Caregiver Advisory Council, that there will be intention in including members that reflect the multilingual language population so that we don't have to assume what the issues are. We don't have to assume it's religious beliefs or, celebrations, but we can get data what it actually is. In addition, I know we had an audit conducted by, was it NWEA? Is that who conducted the MLL audit? West Ed, thank you for the correction. Are there any strategies that you all shared today that were informed by that audit? I'm interested in how we're connecting our efforts to guide our strategies and our plans. So is anything that you shared today, has any of that derived from the audit that was conducted by West Ed?
Our interventions and the things that we put into place were, while they were conducted by research or they were influenced by research, I'm not sure if it was influenced by West Ed in particular, but they were best practices, and our research and analytics team helped us identify those 5 areas that we did move forward with.
So are you all privy to the study? Has that been shared with your group in the work that you all do? I'm just curious.
We've heard about the West Ed research, and I think it's been presented perhaps and shared at some of our district level meetings.
And to speak specifically to some of the call outs that they had in terms of strategies that are also aligned to some of the findings and recommendations from the West Ed audit. One thing that was called out very specifically, in addition to strengthening instructional practices, was really that piece around intentional targeted family engagement. And a lot of what Dr. Parker's team and Dr. Harmon have shared has really been around some intentionality around making sure that our parents are equipped to understand the facts behind what it means when children are chronically absent, the impact that it has on them, not just in that moment, but over time, what that long-term impact would be. And some of the pieces just really around strengthening those MTSS supports. One of the things that we had the opportunity to engage in just last week is a cross-divisional representation. The way that you've seen the attendance data and the discipline data shared together, we also had the opportunity to look at those data pieces with the academic data as well. And we're really beginning to be more intentional at the system level to bring all of those pieces together. So when we're talking about academic performance, school culture, some of the challenges that we're seeing emerging in our buildings. We have collectively looked at all of those data pieces to be able to better identify root causes and ensure that what our strategies are really designed to address that root cause and better support our schools and our students to get back on track.
Dr. Simmons, I think, too, some of the work of the West Ed audit is seen, going back into Dr. Parker's presentation, where she talked about some of the barriers to student attendance and some of the reasons for chronic absenteeism. She talked about engagement, the lack of previous success perhaps in the classroom, that feeling that I don't belong here, that I can't connect to this. A lot of the work of the WestEd audit spoke to, through some specific strategies that we can use instructionally, a resulting increase in student engagement. All right, so specifically, I'm thinking of the concept of quality interactions. So for a lot of our multilingual kids, their opportunity to use voice in their classroom and to hear themselves represented in their classroom in their native language, not through bad intent, but sometimes they've been devoid of that opportunity. What WestEd has taught us are different ways for us to employ strategies and to relay these strategies to our teachers in a really manageable way that increases the opportunities for multilingual kids to use their voice. So those quality interactions, I think, would be something that kind of yields itself to more student engagement for our multilingual kids, and hopefully something that, not immediately, but over time, parlays increased. I'm a big believer that confidence comes from repeated success. And the first times I feel success in that classroom, then the second time, my confidence increased, my desire to be there. So that's kind of a long-term strategy, but I see that in that WestEd work. Chief West work, too, she spoke about some cross-divisional work around language goals and making sure that our teachers understand what a language goal looks like for students and that we recognize that. So when we start a classroom, we're not just looking at our essential question and our academic goal for the day, but let's recognize the fact that in our room we have a diverse population of learners, and let's recognize a language goal as well for that day, so we can find another way to capture success and growth and kind of turn that into that confidence that comes from repeated success. So I think, while not directly stated in Dr. Parker's presentation and the presentation by the team, that engagement piece, I think, will grow through the application of some of the work in that WestEd audit.
Thank you both for the context. I will say, when you all started the presentation, I said, well, what are we doing different this year? And you all hit it nail on at the end. I really appreciate you all sharing what we're doing differently this year, because I did notice with the data that I think, as Chief Harmon noted, and I want to use your language specifically, you noted that we had our high watermark. You knew I was going to say that. Our high watermark is 2024, whereas other districts have already started trending downward and we have not. So I'm really wanting to see, well, what are we doing differently? Because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and expecting different results. So thank you for sharing specifically what we're doing differently today. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Dr. Taylor.
All right. Well, thank you, Ms. Nebel, Dr. Harmon, Dr. Parker, and Ms. Baskerville. At this time, we now have Kathy Harden, Chief Human Resources Officer, provide an update on staff reports. Chief Harden.
Chairperson Dr. Simmons, board members, and Dr. Taylor, the HR team and I are pleased to present the Human Resources Report for the month of July. We currently have 29 vacancies, teaching vacancies, for this 25-26 school year. As you have requested, we are sharing a month-by-month comparison. Additionally, last year at this time, we had 81 teaching vacancies. Therefore, we've reduced vacancies by more than 50% in comparison to last year's data. The recruitment team, as well as the HR directors, are continuing to partner with principals to staff all school vacancies for next school year. We continue to use our marketing strategies, which have proven successful, to source and identify candidates directly to principals. Our paraprofessional vacancies. We currently have 81 vacant paraprofessional positions for the 25-26 school year. As you have requested, we are sharing a month-by-month comparison. Over the past month, we've seen a decrease in paraprofessional vacancies across the district. To address these vacancies, our talent sourcing specialists are actively collaborating with our recruitment team to support target paraprofessional candidates. We remain committed to ensuring our schools are fully staffed and our students receive consistent, high-quality support. 25-26 hiring update. This slide shows the data regarding new teacher hires so far for the 25-26 school year. 1,310 total new teachers hired for this school year. New teachers by level: elementary 462, middle 245, high school 199, and special education 404. New hires by title: 803 for Title I schools and 507 for non-title schools. We're excited about the outcomes of our 2025 recruitment and hiring strategy. This slide shows a recap of the 2025 hiring season. The timeline activities as well as the ongoing activities have allowed the talent management and recruitment team to recruit and hire the best candidates to positively impact student achievement this school year. As you can see, ongoing activities, campus recruitment. Over this year, we've connected with 3,968 candidates. Strategic marketing and advertising is mixed media, driven by data to increase application traffic and our pipeline development, in addition to our digital out-of-home campaign. Our pipeline development, we've spent specific time working with technical colleges to develop our paraprofessional pipelines. Our Teach for America and H-1B visa sponsorships are also part of our pipeline development. Candidate sourcing, we have multiple strategies to identify and recruit passive candidates. So not only are we looking and speaking with those people who are actively engaging with GCPS, we're also looking at identifying and reaching out to candidates who are not actively looking for other employment opportunities. Our Grow Your Own recruitment, obviously we still have our Future Teacher Signing Day, substitute teachers, paraprofessionals, and teacher residents programs that we're continuously working on. So our calendar for the year, starting in January, we had our student teacher mixer in the month of mixer event in the month of January, Coffee and Careers weekly virtual events and advanced hiring. In February, our signature teacher recruitment event, and then the Metro RESA Job Fair. In March, teacher and paraprofessional hiring event at Cool Ray Field. In April, our teacher and paraprofessional hiring event at Discovery High School. And then in May, classified hiring event here at the ISC. In June and July, we did local school interview days. This summer, HR has led several key professional learning opportunities designed to strengthen support for our schools and classrooms. We hosted this summer learning for the third cohort of the Alternatively Certified Teacher Institute, which continues to build the capacity of educators entering the profession through non-traditional pathways. Going into the third year, we hosted our teacher resident orientation, providing virtual onboarding and instructional support to those participating in our teacher residency programs through Georgia Gwinnett College, Georgia State University, and the University of North Georgia. Recognizing the important role of all school-based staff, we offered tailored professional development for both substitute teachers and local school administrative assistants, focused on building confidence, consistency, and improved customer service. These summer sessions are part of our broader commitment to equipping every member of our workforce with the tools they need to succeed from day one. And you can see our alternative Certified Teacher Institute 3.0, which this is our third year, teacher resident orientation, substitute professional development day, and then our local school administrative professional development. New employee onboarding. Our summer new employee onboarding continues to be a major collaborative effort across human resources and several key departments. Since May 27th, we've hosted 22 sessions, offered 3 days per week to ensure a smooth and informative onboarding experience for our incoming staff. Each session is made possible by the coordination and expertise of more than 30 GCPS team members representing a range of essential services, including benefits, leave, compensation, employee clearance, the GCPS Foundation, our leadership development team, retirement office, substitute staffing, and the talent management team. This cross-functional support helps new hires feel equipped, welcomed, and prepared to begin their journey in GCPS. This concludes the Human Resources Report, and I stand ready for any questions you may have.
Board members, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you, Chair Dr. Simmons, and thank you, Chief Harmon, for this very comprehensive report. I appreciate learning about all the how you all are trying to recruit and attract new teachers. I just have one question, especially for the sake of time. Do we have data? So a lot of this data is around brand new teachers. Do we have data around teachers who are moving from one GCPS school to another GCPS school? And then when that movement happens, I would love to learn more about some supports for the leaders within that building to help recruit or retain those teachers. I know we kind of talked a little bit about this at one of our previous governance trainings. And then secondly, for new teachers coming to GCPS who are outside of the teaching profession. So they may, like for example, we have engineers coming to our schools teaching algebra. Let me see how I can phrase this question. How are we supporting, because the ethics for teaching in a classroom serving students looks a lot different than the ethics that may be present in coming from the business industry or like from professions like the engineer world.
So several questions.
Yes.
I'll go with the ethics question first, and then I'll probably lean into Dr. Mosley to speak to our alternative certification institute that we hold this summer that I just spoke about regarding what happens in that institute to support those non-traditional teachers that are coming into the district. We actually, in this year's new teacher orientation, did hold an ethics training at Gads South. So we recognize the need to ensure that those that are not traditionally trained in education, as well as those who are new to teaching, that they are getting that ethics training up front. So we conducted an ethics training at the NTO this year. Dr. Mosley.
And then I had a question around, do we have data on our teachers who are moving
Yes, Dr. Mosley's
from
gonna-
one GCPS school to another?
Yeah, he's going to take that piece.
So for the Alternatively Certified Teacher Institute, this year we're focusing on our 4 clusters that have the largest numbers. And we hosted our Summer Institute in June, and the purpose of that is to equip these teachers who are transitioning from another career with the tools that they need to be successful in their first month of school with building a successful classroom culture, establishing procedures, et cetera. And then we have follow-up learning days throughout the year to support those teachers as well. And we're constantly communicating with principals to see what other supports they may need.
Dr. Mosley, will you share a little bit about the employee experience and those pillars that are used in the employee experience piece of the process as well?
Sure. So through the Alternatively Certified Institute, we really focus on the onboarding piece as well as professional development, which are 2 of our core workplace practices. I mean, we really tailor it to what someone may need who has not been traditionally trained through a student teaching experience.
Thank you for that. And then do we also have data around our teachers who are moving from, so if I'm a teacher at Tequila High School and I push the button and I say I want to teach at Central Gwinnett High School next year, do we have data around teachers who are moving, so not just brand-new teachers to GCPS, but ones who are moving to other schools? And then do we also have data around the support for leaders, so admin or just other leaders within the building, in helping to retain those teachers who may be transitioning or pushing the button to go to another school?
Yes, so there is a direct correlation to what you're looking for. So we do track internal movement. We've actually seen a 22% reduction in movement from building to building based on some of the work, and it's not solely, we don't solely attribute it to our employee experience work, but our team works through that office one-on-one with principals to identify which of our core workplace practices they want to focus on in their building to support what they think is the greatest need to create that space where teachers want to stay. So we are addressing internal movement as well as looking at retention from a district lens. Anything you want to add, Dr. Mosley?
I would just say that the internal transfers are handled during the placement preference process, which is in January. So those numbers are not going to be included on any of the slides that you saw today.
I just had one comment, and I think it's in direct correlation to what Ms. Stone brought up about the teachers coming from outside the profession. It was an honor to attend the new teacher orientation on Tuesday morning. I know Adrian was there as well, and it was just neat to see all the people that stood up that came from outside of the teaching profession, and they were all there with big smiles on their faces, ready to hit our classroom. So no, that it was. Recruiting is super important, obviously, to me as well, being from that side of the business and being in the corporate space, and y'all do a great job, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for this presentation. I have a question in particular around the schools that have the most vacancies. I don't know which ones they are, but that would be helpful to kind of understand which ones. Maybe I have a gleaning of, oh, you have them, okay.
I really didn't want to name schools here in the meeting because we're live streamed, but we can certainly share that electronically with you.
Yeah, I would love to see
tomorrow. We do have 29 vacancies. I do want to point out, we'll share this with you, but 11 of the 29 vacancies were just posted this week. So these are positions either someone has taken a coaching position perhaps at another Gwinnett school, or they're positions that after recruiting and scheduling, principal may have identified an additional need in the building, and so they've posted an allotment to address that concern for scheduling for opening.
I continue to wonder for the schools that maybe we have seen constantly with high vacancies or high turnover, the innovations we're doing, the incentives, I wonder that. So if you can share that in the email. And I know we've asked for this before, and what I've heard from some teachers is class sizes is something that is a major issue. And I also wonder if there's a correlation around schools with, large class sizes and teachers, schools with, behavior discipline issues, which I think there's also a correlation with class sizes and behavior. What does that look like? And then I think that could also address some of the attrition that may be happening if we kind of look at the data again to see that.
Absolutely.
So I would like to be able to kind of get a better idea again of those particular schools that are consistently on the list, and then what we're doing to help support them differently.
Okay.
And then the other question I have is, were teachers, I know before we've provided like a gift card for them to purchase school supplies or provided incentive right before the beginning of the year. Are we doing anything like that this year?
Okay.
Thank you for your question, Dr. Therese. As a matter of fact, we are. And I think you got something in your most recent board updates, kind of laying out a timeline of what's coming. So they're about to get, around the 24th, teachers will receive their emails from Amazon with the instructions. Principals have already been notified. Communications is also helping with getting that information out so that teachers have that information before they start. I think they even got some updates at the recent new teacher orientation. So, yes, they are getting that this year again. And I think the program is set up, if you go back to your notes, to be even more robust because it's taken a lot of evaluation and feedback from the previous 2 years to kind of improve the process and enhance easeability and, adding more supplies to curated lists and things of that nature. But, and then, of course, support from our purchasing department because they're the ones who are spearheading that through Amazon Business. So, yes.
Thank you for sharing that out. I wanted to make sure we had, and then the final question is, oh my goodness, I forgot. Go ahead, yeah.
I just have one question, Chief Hardin. I'm connecting a comment earlier in the attendance presentation. No, the discipline presentation. There was mention of one of the threats being students missing class, and what do we attribute this to large high schools. And something that I just heard that kind of made me connect the two is around this idea, and this is not going to be a popular question, but has the district considered smaller class sizes as a way to address, disciplinary issues, just related to this idea of why maybe teachers are leaving a certain school or certain environments? Has there been exploration into how smaller class sizes might address that issue?
I don't know that I'm the best person to respond to
I saw you
that,
looking
so
at me.
I'll defer.
Short answer is yes, and I think it's an ongoing conversation that's kind of multi-layered. So first, I really think we could probably do a better job of really level setting what expected class size should be, right? The concept of reducing class sizes or smaller class sizes, there's not a bottom to that, but that's, from a financial perspective, we have to have a bottom in terms of what we can be able to afford, and I can remember even, days as a principal, I always prided myself in having classrooms with what I consider small class sizes that were always significantly under state max. But I'd never met a teacher who didn't want fewer students, and rightfully so, like the demands and expectations on it. And so I think that's part one that we level set. But there is also a limitation. So that concept of large high schools, the strategy in Gwinnett traditionally has been we build larger schools because what's going to be required is more space, and we're landlocked. So you run out of building space if you reduce class sizes. The consequence is you have to put trailers on campus. Like that's a result of some of the growth that we've seen. Well, some of the areas where you've seen an increase in trailers, it's not necessarily just because there's growth and development around there. That may actually be the result of a principal and leadership team being intentional about reducing class sizes. And then once you've run out of internal building space, you have to you hire another teacher. You got to have another space for them. So there's some limitations in it, but I think we've heard that consistently enough that it does deserve, some very open and honest conversations. So that is something that, we're going to engage Teacher Advisory Council in. And, we always have a charge for our CST specifically to work with principals and look at their class sizes. So, yeah.
And that's why I said it wasn't a popular question, because I know there are financial implications to smaller class sizes, but in thinking about doing what's best for students, and thinking about being innovative, and thinking about being transformational, if there is, research to support that it could impact achievement, I definitely would support hearing more about what those financial implications might be, and, what further research would look like, and thinking about maybe leveraging that for those school sites that would benefit. Thank you.
And I remember my question, and I want to just quickly comment, Dr. Simmons, thank you for that question. And when we think about the WestEd study, and the WestEd study talked about the quality engagement, right, as you mentioned, and that quality engagement can really only happen in a way that is authentic and robust when you have smaller class sizes. And then you see the benefit of that will impact not just academic performance, behavior, attendance, attrition, reducing attrition, right? So like the value of the smaller class sizes, you know, is definitely going to help our overall success for our students. So I'm excited about you looking more into how we can do that in a way that makes sense for our school system, because it is rooted in meeting the needs of all of our children. And the wondering also is looking at the schools that have high classroom sizes versus the schools that don't, and also seeing that there may be data already available to be able to say, here's a case study that we can say that there is a direct impact. So thank you for that. But the question I had is around the pay for a new teacher. Now, I've heard this before from new teachers who have to wait 30 days to get paid. And I don't know what the school system can do for advancement for those new teachers who, especially in this economy, it's like really hard and challenging. But for the new teachers who are coming in, how can we help them?
Well, I'd like to also add to, I think, the question posed by Dr. Simmons, and I'm not too sure it was an actual question or it was just a statement to Dr. Taylor, but you asked about some data behind cost of class size reduction. And I know in our last analysis, so using FY24, FY25 numbers, our estimate just for staffing to reduce by one student would cost a little bit more than $36 million, if I'm recalling that number correctly. So it's a significant, just by one student reduction. And that's not considering facilities, needs, and enhancements in those situations where there's a classroom capacity issue. So that's not considering facility enhancements as well. In terms of the payroll and trying to see what we can do for teachers who are new to the district and having to wait for an extended period of time, or we can certainly look into that. I know that it has probably come up many times in the district before. So there's obviously potential enhancements that we could look at across the board. It might, you know, we've discussed or looked into perhaps doing semi-monthly payrolls in the past. I know the district studied this extensively and apparently surveyed staff, and it was apparent that they weren't in favor of it at that point in time. So I don't think they moved forward on that as a choice. But we can certainly look into it.
Yeah, I wonder if that's a competitive advantage also, right? Like if other school systems have 30 days and you have to wait, and GCPS offers where you get something up front or something like that. I don't know what that looks like, but, you know, like I think that could also be something that could be a competitive advantage.
All right, Dr. Taylor, I turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Chief Harden. We now have Chief Financial Officer Masana Mallett provide the monthly financial update. Chief Mallett.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Good afternoon, Chairperson Dr. Simmons, board members, and Dr. Taylor. I'm pleased to present the General Fund Monthly Financial Report for the period ending May 31st, 2025. This is period 11, or the 11th month in the fiscal year for 2025. Looking at revenue to the far right, you'd see through May, total revenue remains at just 3% higher. Local revenues are about 4% higher than budget, and this is consistent with last month, so there's not much of a change there. Under state revenue, it's about 1.4% higher than budget, and then on the federal, it's about 31.5% higher. Under expenses, salaries and benefits pretty much are on target or on what we would expect at the budget at this time. And then non-personnel expenses are well under at about less than 22% lower than the budget. So we would expect to probably see this kind of continue through June, perhaps even lesser on the salaries, depending on what we have to accrue for. And then, of course, looking at revenues, because revenues are now under expenses, through May, we would expect to see in June significant payments from our QB or state revenue, and this will sort of put our fund balance back into adding additional surplus to the fund balance. And that concludes my report or my update on the budget. We would anticipate that because of that ending fund balance, again, our general fund will probably end at a very stable but healthy position. And then for our FY26, just a reminder that we are in the final stages of looking or working with the county on our property tax, and so preparing and gearing up for our property tax hearings, which are, remind you, a whole month later than our usual process. I want to remind the board that we're going to have our first public hearings starting on August 6th, so one at 11 o'clock, one at 6 p.m., and then our final public hearing, our third and final public hearing on August 13th at 6 p.m., at which point we would have to call for a vote on the millage rate adoption. So, of course, I will do presentations and hopefully be able to provide updates before then. And so that concludes my report.
Thank you, Board. Any questions or comments? All right, Dr. Taylor.
All right. Thank you, Chief Mallard. We now have Chief of Staff George Gomez and his team member provide a legislative update for us items of class.
Chairperson Dr. Simmons, board members, and Dr. Taylor, thank you. While we do not have either a policy or legislative update for you this evening, we are going to turn the podium over to Dr. Jewel Harmon, and she will bring to us 2-3 slides on Senate Bill 63. For the purpose of context, please be reminded that Senate Bill 63 was passed this year. Am I saying Senate Bill 63? I should be saying House Bill 63. Was passed this year, and that is the one that allows homeschool students to be tested in the LEAs for tests like PSAT, SAT, and other type of tests. So, Dr. Harmon?
Good afternoon again. Thank you, Chief Gomez. You've taken most of the information on this first slide. So just a reminder of the law, when it was signed, it is effective for the 25-26 school year. And the tenets of the law say that the school district must allow homeschool students, or home study students as the state calls them, to take the same assessments that the school district students take. And we're not allowed to charge for them if the district does not charge their students for them. So that means that because for the College Board suite of assessments and ASFAB, we have a pathway for providing those assessments to those home study students free of charge, with the exception of AP. Our students pay for AP exams, and so homeschool students will have to pay for those AP exams. The law says that they must reside in district boundaries, so we're not going to provide that service for students who would live outside of the Gwinnett boundary, and it covers students grades 6 through 12. So we have a plan that will be shared broadly in the coming month. We are working out the final details of that. We will provide district devices because all of those assessments are digital now. We will limit testing sites, so they will not be testing at what would be their zoned high school. We want to limit burden and other issues from those high schools. So we're going to have limited testing sites. We're going to have an online registration process with those testing details, and they will be available for families on our website by late August. That's well within the registration period for PSAT, which will happen first. And then after that, we'll start registration for the other assessments. That registration process will include all of the boxes that need to be checked for College Board. Some of those our students don't do because we know who they are. We have student ID, we have pictures of them, but all of that will be communicated to families early so they'll know what they'll need to provide in order to do that registration. No registration or burden will take place at local schools. All of that will happen via online or through the Strategy, Performance, and Evaluation Division. So that's the update. We are prepared to comply. No questions?
Board members, do you have any questions or comments at this time?
I do. Oh, go ahead.
I just have one really quick question. Do we have a anticipation number or how many approximate number of students we anticipate?
So it's difficult to say, but last year we ran into something kind of similar and we didn't test in-house. We worked with an external partner and the College Board to set up a site that wasn't a GCPS site for those students to register and take assessments. And although there seemed to be quite a bit of interest initially, by the time we got down to those zoned in Gwinnett boundaries, it's probably about 25-ish students for SAT. But it's difficult to say what that will look like exactly now that the new laws come into place. But we'll share that information as we get registration numbers and as we go through the process. The board will be kept up to date.
Thank you. I've heard Mr. Knudsen say this before, and I'm going to say this as well. With the laws that are put into place, there are costs that's associated with some of these laws, and I know we have a $16 billion surplus in Georgia, and certainly it would be helpful for that more commitment around investing in education. And so my wondering is, with this particular law and even the absenteeism, there's some costs associated with that new bill as well. Has there been any discussion with the state or any advocacy legislative efforts related to some costs that could help fund these two?
For the advocacy part, I know that last year, Dr. Goldie walked through that with us. We kept detailed numbers about the expense it cost us to do that work and all of those pieces. So, and I know he took that down to the Capitol, so.
Dr. Therese, there is a standing request, not just from Gwinnett County, but from all school districts across Georgia, that any time the legislator is going to create a bill that amounts to a unfunded mandate, that they put a 12-month period lag on it so we can study and see the impact. That's an ongoing request. That's a request that all school systems make on a yearly basis. That's a request that David Goldie makes to our legislators on a yearly basis, but they don't always listen to that request.
We will continue to keep numbers on registration and, like I said, to keep the board updated on all of that as we move forward.
So just as a follow-up to that, is it a practice for us to, after implementing the unfunded mandates, to go back and share with the state how much it cost us?
We do from time to time, not in every single event, but we have certain opportunities to do that. Anytime that we meet with the legislative body and have a meeting with the board, and that's a good opportunity. We always have the following year when we meet with them for the legislative priorities, but we also have the time where Mr. Goldie can go down there and speak personally to the authors of this bill to remind them of that.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments? All right. Chief Taylor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gomez, Dr. Goldie, and Dr. Harmon. We will now take time for discussion or to answer any questions you may have regarding items on this evening's business meeting agenda.
Board members, any questions or comments?
I do. I have a question related to the iReady. Can you share some more information regarding the investment in that? I know that there's been some a conversation even at the legislative level where iReady kind of wasn't a preferred, and now we're putting quite a bit of money into the iReady, and so and we're supposed to vote on this, and I want to make sure that that we have some understanding around what's going on and the decisions around that.
So iReady in Gwinnett County Public Schools was adopted, I believe, in the 21-22 school year for pilot implementation. And then we moved forward with full implementation the following year. It was adopted prior to the dyslexia law, prior to the universal screener requirements and all of those pieces. But it is an approved tool for that purpose. It was not the identified tool that the state identified. The difficulty is with that is that the state identified their tool almost 3 years into our implementation of this work, if you count the pilot year. And so we've invested the resources and supports in getting that implementation. At this point, although the state's tool might be free, as you just stated it with the unfunded mandates, isn't really free. We would have to then provide the PD and all the pieces, retrain, reestablish our data protocols and systems to bring on the free resource from the state. That being said, iReady actually does. We've really embarked upon a cross-collaborative, cross-divisional way to integrate the iReady use, not just into MTSS, not just for state and federal requirements, but building it into our balanced assessment system and really making it align for instructional purpose and academic benefit to the student, not just for requirement and check a box because the state says we must identify a tool. And that work has happened in conjunction with teaching and learning and school improvement and operations. So iReady is, while it's funny, we talked about this with our principals because they've talked about how much assessment we do and for what purposes. What I've said is we can pick a new tool, but that new tool, again, comes with a hill to climb. And so we would be essentially restating and resetting the clock if we were to move into the state's resource that is free.
Mm-hmm. So I guess my wondering is the impact. So what's the cost-benefit analysis? Like, are our students getting the value around the iReady in a way that we expect? Because if we're paying for it just because it's what we've always done versus there's evidenced impact of the data. I mean, we get the iReady information, but do we really know what's the cost benefit around that and whether it's driving, literacy improvement versus investing in something different that may be more impactful, that might be worth it because at the end of the day, it's about making sure we are giving our children the academic supports that they need, and just wonder about that.
So we haven't done a cost-benefit analysis. I would respectfully request that we take into consideration and maybe do something like that using the data from this year as we walk through kind of the full implementation of a plan, because we are doing something different this year with that data and with that work. And so I think at the end of this year, we can look at the cost of that and some of the movement that we see in our academic outcomes. And I said movement because while I hope and believe that it'll be positive, it may not be. We may not know what we'll see in that investigation. But I'd like to have the year to actually do that look and then look at the cost for that. But I will say that our iReady data has shown that our students are making their growth. And right now, it is a fairly accurate prediction of where we think our students will land at the end of the year on milestones. I think we're in a space where we are starting to fully realize and implement all of the tools that iReady has to offer. And like I said, we have a new plan that really is cross-divisional that talks about how we can implement that as supplemental resource and support for our students embedded into the Georgia MTSS. Is that a fair?
Yeah, I'm curious about maybe understanding a comparative analysis related to iReady versus another tool and kind of seeing maybe if it's a pilot environment or something, but really seeing where the value could be, because we really don't know the answer if we're not exploring another tool, right, that could specifically address some of the needs. So I'm wondering if that's something we can explore in a small pilot environment where we are comparing and making sure that we are making the investments that can help our kids.
So, yes, we are actually looking at the tool that was approved to be leveraged for free by the state, which is Amira. We have several districts. We have folks on our team who've worked in other districts who have used this tool in their districts previously and also abandoned for a variety of reasons. And I don't want to speak specifically about a particular tool and what some of the differences are. And when we're thinking about how we are assessing student literacy development, Amira is completely computer-based. There are some benefits, and we've identified a couple of ways that we could look at a potential pilot, but it wouldn't necessarily impact our current implementation of iReady right now. Like, we definitely see a need for some opportunities for some summer enrichment opportunities for our students, particularly at the elementary level. One of the things that Amira does allow is a K-8 assessment space. And there's some opportunities where we may be able to leverage that free tool and just see what the results of that would be. I do agree with Dr. Harmon. iReady is a pretty spot-on predictor of how our students would perform on the state assessment. The training, implementation, support, data conversations, like that resource investment on a tool that we've leveraged is pretty significant as well. I think where we are right now is at a place where our schools have developed some fluency with leveraging that resource and using that data to appropriately drive discussions around improvement.
Yeah, what Chief West is what she was referencing, we actually engaged with them a little bit this summer. So we wanted a chance to kind of explore. And so we did have a chance to engage with that team, and that's what she referenced in terms of what came out of that. It was the possibility of maybe some pilot. I don't know exactly what we would, I don't know that we've fleshed out exactly what that would look like. I think this conversation might net a different result if we were in March. There's some hesitation with pivoting just a couple weeks before school and a couple weeks before we would be doing, the actual screening right at the beginning of school. So, but we want to, we want to engage with them, and we have. And so there's going to be some more information about where I think we can land and successfully do it.
And realistically, I'm not asking to make a whole change right before school starting in a couple of weeks. So what I'm saying is doing an analysis where we can seriously intentionally compare the impact of these systems. And we don't know, I don't know as a board member which one. So like if a community member asks me about our investment around iReady versus something else, I don't know which tool would be the best tool. We do receive the reports on iReady. We know how our students are performing when we look at that data. However, we don't have anything to compare that to, and we have this free system that they're free, right, that they're offering. And maybe there may be some other tools that could be better. I don't know that, and I'm requesting for our school system to consider looking at some comparing it for impact.
Yeah. No, your question is not lost at all. It's a great question. It's a great question that we really need to explore, and it's one that we really haven't, and that wasn't really even the genesis of what led to the conversation with Amira this summer. So, no, I appreciate the question. It's definitely one that we'll unpack and explore.
I have a few questions around iReady, and I just want to say as an aside, it is freezing in here. Like, my nose is red. Can we turn the thermostat side? But back to iReady, I saw that it was expensive too. When I looked at it, I gasped when I saw it. And my question around, and before I ask the question around the rate, here's what I will say is around some of the stakeholder feedback that I'm receiving. They favor iReady because, as I mentioned early in the meeting today, and I can attest to this too as a recent former GCPS teacher who taught ELA, it allows, because our curriculum moves so fast, like the GCPS curriculum, like from one day to the next, we are moving. The thing about iReady, and I wonder if there are other software similar to iReady, but one of the reasons why stakeholders, including myself, like iReady is it targets a specific skill that a kid may be struggling with or may need extra practice in a manner that's away from the classroom, so they can work on those skills by themselves. And also with iReady, it is aligned with the AKS, which is aligned with the DOE standards. So that's, and I'll speak to my experience, because the English language arts standards do not change. It's just like the level or the grade level in which you're reading. It can be reused across years. So because it can be used across years, so one of my questions is the rate that I see, so the price that I see, does that make the platform or the software, our credentials, forever, or is it like a year annual renewal basis? Because I also saw that there was an end of the year quote as well.
So I do believe it is an annual contract. I think previously when we first invested in iReady, and it predates my time in GCPS, but I do believe it was like a 3-year agreement for the overall cost. So one of the things, like with the iReady platform, some of the things you described, there's the assessment components that are a part of it, and then there's also, I think, what's embedded and showing up in this contract are those intervention resources that are a part, or intervention supports that are a part of our MTSS intervention plan. So when students might need some additional support based on how they performed on that initial universal screening assessment, there's some opportunities within iReady to leverage some of those instructional tools that students, just like you described, could work on independently on those specific skills.
Yeah, thank you. And I will say, with what I've stated around the feedback around iReady and its effectiveness, I would like to see, because I don't have this data, but I would like to see also, because it's now being used as a screener for dyslexia, I would love to track that progress and how our students are doing as a result of iReady. I also would like to confirm, we're talking about dyslexia and it kind of alludes to the ELA. Does this subscription also include math? Okay, awesome. And my last question is separate from iReady. It's it's a consent agenda item. I think it's 4.06. No, 4.08. The on-demand electrical services. I have not been able to access the PDF, and I have asked at least twice before this meeting. For whatever reason, when I click on the document, I've switched devices. The PDF attached to it, I cannot access. So if someone could print the PDF out for me so that I can have it ahead of the 7 p.m. meeting, that would be great.
And again, I just want to reiterate.
It's the on-demand electrical.
Yeah. I think she has it. Mr. Gasper shared it with her. And thank you for Ms. Stone for sharing the information around your experience with iReady. And I just, again, wonder, comparing another tool would be important because we don't know what we don't know, and there may be some advantageous things that that can be culturally specific, that can engage other things, that could still be targeted in other ways, but that could be a competitive tool to iReady that we don't know of. And I would just appreciate the exploration of that because we don't really know.
And I'll say, like, when we originally rolled out iReady, there were like 3 tools that were being rolled out at the same time. iReady, NWEA MAP, and DIBELS. I can't remember if it was from M-Class or Amplify, the DIBELS assessment. So we do have some we do have some data and analysis that was done when we were leveraging all 3, which led to the decision to just move forward with iReady. So I think that's in a report that we put together maybe a year or 2 ago.
Any more questions, comments?
Can you resend that, please? Thank you.
Okay, Chief Taylor.
All right, so the presentations under consideration for the August 21, 2025 work session are, as typical and traditionally, we do a back-to-school report. This one, really want to also use that as an opportunity to embed a transition plan update as outlined in that transition plan, just to kind of give a high-level summary. You'll get a pretty in-depth report of the short and long-term recommendations that have been accumulated this far, but we really want to kind of give a status report on that transition plan, and it'll be probably a really good time as we will have a little bit more information about the superintendent search. So we're going to try to embed that into that back-to-school report. And then, of course, the embargo for the milestones data would have been lifted by the time we are convening it back in August, so we'll do the milestones presentation as well.
Can the team confirm, not in the moment
Sure.
necessarily, but last August, I wonder if we spent the entire time talking about milestones data? Because I know we're going to have questions, and I know that's going to be a robust discussion. I don't want us to feel rushed, and I wonder if we're trying to address too much in August.
Okay. So priority would be milestones? Yes. Okay. Absolutely. Is that, yeah, I mean, we can make that adjustment. We can do, we can figure something out around a back-to-school report and maybe get you the information that you might need in weekly reports or some very brief or condensed version of that. But if we need to hold on the back-to-school report, I think we can make that happen. It was the so in the transition plan, we kind of outlined having an opportunity to engage the board in an update on where we've been, but also the compilation of the short-term and long-term recommendations that might be useful data going into the search process. We can get that information to the board through back channels. We were going to it was just going to be embedded in that. But if we're pausing on the back to school report, you'll still get that information. It just wouldn't be in a public presentation.
Well, I'm not speaking for the entire board when I say this, but I thought that last year, we spent the entire time talking about milestones data. So if that was the case, I just want to make sure we have ample time to discuss it. But if you do feel like there's a way you all might present it differently that allows for discussion of other topics, feel free to present that. But I just want to make sure that we're thoughtful about making sure that everybody has time to ask their questions around the milestones data.
And I mean, I've slept a couple times since that.
It was the only topic in August,
yeah.
correct?
Yep. So, okay, we can, I think actually we did the back to school report early. We did it in July last year, now that remind, but it wasn't really a back to school. It was more of a, here's what we're anticipating is going to happen. So yeah, we can do that through back channels. It was just about making sure that you got the information, that you needed, particularly as we enter the superintendent search process. So not a problem. So barring any additional questions on that, this is now that was time that was dedicated for board discussion. We were hopeful to end the work session at 5:15. We're a little over. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, so we can pretend like it's 5 and still give you 10 or 15 minutes to have a board discussion.
Board, are there any other comments or questions?
Just if you could, we have been engaging in the superintendent search process, and if you want to give an update on September, we'll have some conversation around that. Do you want to share anything? No? Okay.
All right, so Dr. Simmons, that concludes our segment then.
All right, so this concludes our work session. Board members, I need a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing or deliberating upon the appointment, employment, compensation, hiring, disciplinary action, dismissal or periodic evaluation of a public employee or officer, considering student discipline matters, discussing and considering threatened and/or potential litigation with the board attorney, and/or discussing the acquisition, disposal, or lease of real estate, and/or discussing cybersecurity plans, procedures, and contracts. Board members, do I have a motion to go into executive session?
I make a motion to, go ahead.
I make a motion for the purposes stated that we go into executive session.
I have a motion by Ms. Stone. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Therese. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. It is unanimous. We are now in executive session.